The CBC drama series presents Barometer Rising, a story of Nova Scotia in the First World War. Barometer Rising, the novel by Hugh MacLennan, adapted for broadcasting by Rita, Greer. Production is by Rupert Kaplan of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and it's presented by the CBC International Service. Barometer Rising by Hugh MacLennan, Part 1. Sunday.
The place is Halifax, Nova Scotia. The year 1917. Sunday, December the 2nd.
4 o'clock.
He had been limping around Halifax all day, and he was tired. He looked through the dirty window of the restaurant, saw the interior was empty, and went in through the double doors. There was a counter, a man in a soiled apron, a few tables and chairs, and a smell of mustard. No one he had ever known in Halifax would be seen in this place. He pulled out one of the warped stools at the counter and sat down.
Yes, sir. What'll you have?
Barber and ham sandwich.
Yes, sir. Marble and ham. You're English, I bet, eh?
No.
No? Funny, I thought you were an English fella. Kind of an English fella down on his luck. Where you from?
Around here.
Halifax? Is that right? You've been over there, though.
I just got back.
I thought so. I can tell. Even demobbed ones like you. Mustard on your sandwich.
Thanks.
I was in it myself for a while. I didn't get very far. I got to Quebec. My wife thinks that's funny. She says when you get in the army, you started moving backwards before you even begin. How far'd you get? Okay, I was only asking. Here's your sandwich.
Thanks.
It's okay. One bob.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Okay, it's okay. No skin off my teeth. Here's your bobful.
Tell me,
Yeah?
did you ever know... There's a chap I knew overseas from around here. Alec Mackenzie, and Corporal Alec Mackenzie. Have you ever heard of him? Big Alec, we call him.
Well, I knew an Alec Mackenzie once, but he's a little fella. Wouldn't be the same guy, I guess.
Do you know Colonel Wayne?
Who? How would a guy like me be knowing colonels? Oh, I've heard of him, though. Wayne's pretty rich, they say. Getting richer since he came back, too.
Is he here? In Halifax?
Sure. Saw a picture of him on the paper. Hey, look out, that cut. Don't shake. Cut. My gosh, you shell-shocked or something? That was only a streetcar went by. You better sit down again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It'll pass.
That's okay, chum. I've seen shell-shock before. Yeah. Hey, now, don't worry about the cup. You need coffee.
No, thanks. I'm all right.
You should take it easy.
Yeah. How much do I owe you?
Hey, sit down.
No,
again.
I'm all right.
Okay, it's a quarter for the sandwich and the bob.
Thanks.
You sure you're okay?
Yes, thanks. Tell me, this Colonel Wayne...
Yeah?
Do you know... Would you know if he's in town now?
Well, I saw his picture in the Chronicle last week sometimes. I guess he must be.
Thanks. Good night.
And I saw a picture of his daughter, too.
Oh.
To do with some shipyard business or other. What's her name? Penn... something. Quite a looker.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Look out for yourself.
Penelope.
It was cold outside. He walked towards the intersection and waited for the streetcar to stop. It would be so easy to get into that car, to cross town to the south end, to climb the steep hill, up to the Red House. Would it be just as he remembered it? It was 3 years since the last time. It was neither gracious nor beautiful, that house. In a way, it was almost forbidding. But it so typified the history and character of its town that it belonged exactly as it was. Solid British colonial, with a fanlight over the door, about 6 feet of lawn separating it from the sidewalk, 4 thick walls, no L's or additions, high ceilings and high windows, and shutters on the inside where they could be useful, if not decorative. It would be so easy to cross the town, climb the street, and knock on the door, to take a chance on the right person opening it.
Penny?
Just a few minutes, and it would be done. And then, whatever else might happen, this loneliness, which welled inside like a salt spring, the loneliness would disappear.
Penny.
Spasmodically, he clasped one hand with the other and squeezed it hard. He turned quickly and limped north up the side street, away from the streetcar and the house in the south end of Halifax.
5 o'clock.
I'll answer the door, Sadie.
All right, Miss Penny. Supper's nearly ready if it's Colonel Wayne himself.
You stay with it.
I told him he needn't ring it again, Penny.
It makes such a wonderful sound.
You can stay out here and ring it all evening, Uncle Jim.
Good, I'd love to.
It'll probably be much more amusing than supper. So this one is a bit of a celebration.
Oh, who's celebrating what? Oh, where'll I put my hat, Penny?
Who's coming?
Oh, Mariah and Alfred are here, judging by their coats. Good God, do they always have to take up the whole hat stand?
They'll hear you. I'll take your hat, Uncle Jim.
Thank
Your coat, Aunt Mary?
Oh, thank you, dear. Who else is coming?
Well, Aunt Mariah and Uncle Alfred are here.
Oh, and we weren't in church this morning. The first thing Alfred's going to say.
Why weren't you in church? We meant to go. It was Jean held us up.
How is she?
Oh, just wonderful. We fairly had to tie the little bat or she'd have followed us here.
Unfair treatment of 2 years old.
2 years old? Hey, the way she's growing is almost indecent. You know, there's wickedness in her ancestry.
No.
Penny, when are you coming out to see her again?
Oh, this week, I promise. Somehow, if I can get away from the shipyards. They've asked for another speed-up in the war work.
Oh, you're working yourself too hard, Penny.
Oh, no, I'm not really. Besides, you haven't heard my news. I had a cable from London this morning.
London?
From Whitehall.
The Admiralty?
Yes. They like my design.
Your ship? Your submarine chaser? Why, Penny, they've accepted it.
Penny!
I told you you were good.
Oh, don't be too sure, Uncle Jim. They'll probably only test it and reject it. But anyway, they've accepted the design.
Oh, it's simply marvelous news, darling. I'm so proud I could burst. Let's hug you.
No wonder you're celebrating.
Oh, Penny.
Oh, what did your father say when you told him?
Nothing much.
Isn't that just like Jeffrey? My God, what a family I married into.
Penny?
Oh, there.
It's Roddy.
Oh, come on downstairs, Roddy. It's only us here.
Oh, hello. I thought it was Major Murray.
Who?
Sadie told me Major Murray was coming for supper. Is he, Penny?
Angus Murray? Good Lord, is he, Penny?
I told you I was celebrating. Come over to the light, Roddy, and I'll fix your tie.
I didn't know you knew him, Penny.
Oh, yes, very well.
Penny, what does Major Murray drink?
Oh, Roddy.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Ouch, Penny, that hurts.
Hold still until I get it straight, then.
But I heard Uncle Alfred say he drank something terrible.
Roddy, you must be the champion liar of your class.
Well, he did say that. Honest, Penny.
I'm quite sure he did. Honest, Roddy. And you didn't know what he meant, either.
Well, does he?
And you run along into the kitchen and try to keep your hands clean until supper.
All right. See you later, Uncle Jim. Aunt Mary.
And don't
You bet,
stare when
Uncle.
you meet Major Murray, either.
Well, this promises to be a special evening.
I know. We'd better go into the living room before Mariah and Alfred burst with impatience.
Oh, heaven forbid. Now, put on your Sabbath face, Mary.
Oh, I will.
Well, at last. I thought you were going to spend the evening in the hallway.
Hello, Mariah.
Why weren't you in church today?
Well, how are you, Alfred?
Not very good.
Nonsense. There's nothing the matter with you. Penelope, why weren't you in church? There was a terrible sermon. I ran into Mrs. Taylor this evening as we came out. That woman I was telling you about in the Red Cross. She's dreadful. People like that shouldn't be allowed to take part in the war. And did Penny tell you who she's asked here tonight? Major Murray. That doctor who used to ruin his practice with drink wherever he went.
Well, I haven't seen Angus in years.
Wasn't he in your father's regiment overseas, Penny?
He's about the only one left to tell of it.
Yes, he was medical officer until he was wounded.
Now, what's that got to do with his coming here? I'd like to hear what Geoffrey says when he sees him. I'd like to hear that very much.
Major Murray's right arm is in a sling, Aunt Maria. You should adore him. He nearly lost it in the service of his country.
Well, ring the bell well enough.
Now, for heaven's sake, don't stare when he comes in. Roddy's already promised not to. And please talk.
That young woman's too sure of herself.
Oh, don't be an old fool, Alfred. After what she's done.
Stuff. She should be ashamed of herself, working in a shipyard. What does a woman know about ships?
Well, that particular woman knows enough to make most men look sick.
Stuff. She should be ashamed of herself. And this Murray...
Angus, I don't believe you know my family.
Oh, we met, Mary, just before you went overseas.
Why, yes. Jim Fraser, isn't it?
That's right.
Sorry I can't shake hands.
Oh, good to see it isn't worse. I heard you'd lost your arm.
I very nearly did.
My Aunt Mary Fraser, Major Murray.
Mrs. Fraser.
I'm glad we've met at last.
Aunt Maria, Major Murray.
Mrs. Wayne.
How do you do?
Uncle Alfred, Major Murray.
Mr. Wayne.
I do.
Well, they were going to amputate, I understand, Mary, weren't they?
Yes, some of my colleagues advised amputation. I had to battle hard to save it. It was pretty loaded down. Shrapnel splinter just below the elbow. My hand got peppered, too.
Well, you seem to have made a good diagnosis.
Thanks, it's improving.
Will you sit here, Angus?
Thank you.
Good. Now, Major, do tell us about your work.
Well, with this, Mrs. Wayne, I don't work.
Well, of course you don't now you're wounded. I mean France. I mean the war.
Oh, that.
Yes.
Well, that was just one unpleasant job after the other.
But you must have operated on all sorts of people we know. After all, you were in Colonel Wayne's battalion, weren't you?
Indeed, I was, Mrs. Wayne. But you know, I can't remember that any of the boys in the dressing station mentioned you. Of course, they were usually pretty tired when the stretcher bearers brought them in.
Penelope, where's Geoffrey? I don't see why we must wait for him all night.
I can't understand why he's working on Sunday.
Why is your father still working, Penelope?
I'm afraid that's one of the things I can't tell you, Aunt Maria.
Nonsense. You mean you don't choose to?
Geoffrey works too much. He's almost as bad as you, Penelope. Though I must say there's some sense to his job.
Dear Alfred, do you realize you're talking to probably the best ship designer in Canada?
Who?
Penny, of course.
Huh.
Good Lord, can't you people get it into your heads that Penny's not working at the shipyards for amusement? Why, to hear you talk, a man would think her work was nothing better than knitting socks for the Red Cross.
And what's better than the Red Cross?
Penny has designed a warship. That submarine chaser of Penny's is a revolutionary design.
A revolution. Stuff.
And this is supposed to be a new country with people like you in it.
I suppose it's a crime nowadays not to believe that the newer a thing is, the better it is.
Oh, for Pete's sake, Alfred. It's not a matter of Penny's work being new. It's a matter of it being good.
But who says it's good?
I'm under the impression that the British Admiralty think it's good, Alfred. You find it necessary to be shocked at that?
Please, if it will make anyone feel better, I don't deserve the credit for the wretched thing. The whole idea for the design wasn't mine at all.
Whose was it, then?
It was Neil's.
Penelope, you don't know what you're saying.
Father came in, Aunt Maria.
You have no right to mention that name in this house.
Aunt Maria.
Wasn't it enough that he disgraced the whole family without your...
Maria, for Major Murray's benefit, don't you think you might spare our feelings on the subject?
Geoffrey, she said...
As for what Penny said, Neil ought to have been able to design a good ship. We never could interest him in doing anything else. Kindly spare Major Murray the details. I believe the Major knew our nephew personally. Neil McCrae, Major.
Oh, yes, in our battalion, of course.
This is a pleasant surprise to find you here, Major. I hadn't been aware that you people knew one another. Now that my daughter's a professional woman, she's always surprising me. Quite pleasantly, I may say.
Supper is served, Miss Penny.
Oh, thank you, Sadie. Shall we go in?
Would you like to go in, Major, or would you care to miss the soup course and join me in a whiskey and soda instead? I'm sure the others will excuse us.
Oh, of course, Geoffrey. Well, shall we go, Mary?
I'll get Roddy down. Go right in, Aunt Maria.
Do you still have a palate for scotch, Murray?
I'm supposed to like it.
That's one advantage to being involved in wartime shipping. One can get good port and good cigars and good whiskey. Otherwise, it's a clerk's job. Say when.
Thanks. I've heard it's fairly responsible, your job.
Transportation officer? Some people tell me it is. But it's not what an officer on active service should be doing. I hope this suits your taste.
Thank you.
To complete recovery for that arm.
Thanks.
It is good.
Very.
You must find it pretty dull back here.
In Halifax? Oh, no. If I had a job, it wouldn't be so bad.
With that arm, that's difficult. Tell me, Murray, what impressed you most in France?
Oh, loneliness, fear.
You knew my nephew, of course.
I wasn't thinking of McRae when I said that.
I didn't presume you were. Most men are afraid. The ordinary man is afraid all the time, particularly of his neighbor's opinion. That's the main thing that gets him into the army and keeps him there. When another sort of fear becomes stronger than that one, he panics. I fancy we both know that to be true.
Well, frankly, I haven't enough experience of armies to be able to agree with you.
With Neil McRae, it's a great pity about Neil. He had real ability. He knew a great deal, but he was always too unstable to make it count.
Your daughter seems to have a high opinion of him.
He grew up in this house. He was virtually Penelope's brother. You knew him well?
If you don't mind, I'd rather not talk about Neil McRae. I only knew him casually, and he seemed a good fellow.
But you were there the night of the attack.
I was in the dressing station. I merely heard the next day that he had been blown to pieces.
You knew, of course, that he was under guard at the time?
I was told so.
You realize his arrest was not a particularly pleasant decision for me to have to make?
Please, I really don't think I...
No! Now that both of us are out of the battalion, I'd like very much to take the opportunity of saying this to a brother officer. There is no doubt whatever that my nephew's flagrant disobedience of my orders in the middle of the attack that day was responsible for the failure of the whole operation.
That's a serious accusation. There were a great many men killed.
I believe there are only 3 of us left. It was perhaps as well that shell found him. A court-martial would have been extremely painful.
Court-martial?
It would have been my duty to appear as chief witness against my nephew.
But
he would have been shot.
Good God. I think we should go in.
Yes, they should be through the soup by now. Our maid is a Newfoundlander. She becomes very annoyed if we miss more than one course. And so she should. After you, Murray.
7 o'clock.
Thank goodness they've gone. You comfortable? Cushion?
No.
Brighten up the fire?
No.
A drink?
Yes, but not this minute.
Poor Angus. I'm afraid I've given you a pretty bad evening.
Different from my usual run, at least.
They are grim, aren't they?
Well, now I know why this house needs such high ceilings. Your Aunt Mariah alone needs a good many cubic feet of airspace.
What's going on behind that funny smile?
I was thinking about you.
Oh, Angus, I'd expected a better reply than that.
If you could see the shape of my thoughts, you'd probably think the reply adequate enough. Penny, I suppose you're one of the most brilliant women in Canada.
I doubt it.
It's very nice, but it inhibits me. It's not easy to tell a genius. She's adorable.
It must be awkward. I'll get you a drink. As Father says, there's one good thing about being transportation
Don't,
officer.
Penny.
Just here. Yes, a glass even. Would you like to fix it, Angus?
I'd much rather you sat down again. Really?
All right.
Good. Penny, are you as lonely as I am?
I don't know.
We're both mature people. Even if I am 18 years too old for you. You probably know I was married before. I need to blame her death for all those years of letting everything slide and drinking. Penny, I don't know whether you give a hoot in hell for me, but I do know it's no good either of us going on as we are.
Do you think I'm doing so badly, then?
I don't know. Are you?
I have my own work, and I like it.
I had my work, too, and I liked it. No, it doesn't sound convincing. With a body like yours. No. Besides, you could still have your work. With me on your hands, you'd probably need it. Penny, I'm trying to tell you, I want you to marry me.
That's the nicest thing anyone has said to me in years.
Never mind. I've always been noted for my nerve. I will have a drink.
I didn't mean it the way you think. Angus, you don't really know me. If you did...
I've always estimated myself high as a judge of woman. I admit I didn't know how good you were at your job, but that's got nothing to do with your being a woman.
I'm afraid you don't even know so much about me as a woman, Angus. I don't mean that to sound nasty.
You're not in love with someone else, are you?
Come on back here and sit down. I'll tell you my story.
As you like.
Would you rather I didn't? I never tried talking about myself to anyone yet.
You were in love with your cousin, Neil McRae. If you like, you can go on from there.
Yes, you are a good judge of women, Angus. Did you know him well?
Not very. We were both in your father's battalion, of course. But the M.O. in any outfit hasn't much chance to get acquainted.
Father spoke to you about him tonight, of course.
Yes.
Was Neil really killed?
What the devil do you mean?
Father hated him. I think he hated him from the time he was born.
But you...
Since Father's return from France, I've heard nothing but hints and whispers about Neil. The whole town's heard them. You must have heard them. Father never mentions it outright, but it's hardly an accident that everyone thinks Neil would have been shot for cowardice if he had lived, and that Father's discharge from active service was Neil's fault.
Your father wasn't discharged. He was transferred.
Oh, never mind. We both know about that kind of transfer. Please tell me, was Neil really killed in action?
Penny. In this war, no one can afford an excessive imagination. If a man's killed, it's a recorded fact. If he's missing, that's recorded too. Mistakes are possible, but they're not probable.
It'd be as easy to believe I were dead myself.
Penny.
I mightn't be so silly if someone would tell me what happened that day they say he was killed. Will you?
Well, I don't know whether I can. In the first place, I only know the story secondhand. McRae disobeyed an order of Colonel Wayne's in the middle of an attack the battalion was making.
What sort of an order was it?
I'm afraid I don't know. The colonel had lost touch with his battalion for several hours. That's a thing that might have happened to anybody. Don't make too much of it. But it meant the colonel had to send his orders up to the front by runner. I think your cousin was the first frontline officer the runner encountered. He may well have been the senior officer on the spot. All the company commanders had been killed, I know.
And then Neil disobeyed the order, according to Father.
Perhaps. Maybe he misunderstood it. Or perhaps it was an impossible order to carry out. In any case, McRae was charged with disobedience.
The attack, of course, was a total failure.
I really saw one that wasn't in 1915.
Father was blamed for it and sent home where he couldn't do any more harm.
You're obsessed with that angle.
I don't believe Neil was afraid. He might have felt fear, but I don't believe he could ever have been incapacitated by fear. Either he or my father was wrong, and my father has made him responsible.
I wouldn't put it that way. There are no drumhead court-martials in the British Army. All orders are given in writing. And if the boy had obeyed, well, all he'd have had to do in any case was to produce the written order, but no court was held, of course. The German bombardment was a few hours later, and he was killed, along with everyone else, except Wayne and me, and a corporal.
Thank you, Angus. For 2 years, my family has been insinuating that if Neil had faced a court-martial, he'd have been shot. In that event, presumably, Father's military career would have marched gloriously on, and he'd not be in Halifax now. Oh, they don't mean to persecute me, but that's what they'll never let me forget. If Neil had been convicted before he was killed, Father would have been freed of all official responsibility for the failure.
That's stinking rotten. Penny, why don't you get away from here?
And leave Roddy to them?
If this war lasts as long as your father thinks it will, this old hand of mine may see service again.
Oh, Angus.
Poor Penny. Hold on. Here. Here's my handkerchief. There now. It's better now you've talked it out.
You're very good to me. I ought to know better than this. Thank you, Angus.
Penny, if you'll let me, I'm going to keep on coming around to see you.
Please, Angus.
Penny,
Thank you.
No, I think I'll call myself a taxi. Where is the telephone?
In the hallway. I'll come with you.
Eight o'clock.
In the north end of town, he entered the drugstore. The stale, sour smell of the telephone booth hit into his nostrils when he closed himself inside.
Number, please.
I'd like the military hospital.
1 moment, please.
Military hospital?
Yes. I wonder... I want to locate someone.
What division, please?
Oh, I don't really know.
Name and rank, please.
Corporal Alec Mackenzie.
Hold the line.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was full. Take your... Hey, aren't you... Well, for Pete's sake!
Hello?
You old reprobate!
Are you there?
Yes.
There is no Alec Mackenzie here, sir.
Well, if it isn't Neil McRae!
Hello, Charlie.
That was part one of Barometer Rising, the novel by Hugh MacLennan, adapted for broadcasting by Rita Greer, and produced by Rupert Kaplan of the CBC. The music was composed and conducted by Neil Chotem. Bud Knapp was featured as Major Angus Murray, with Mary Douglas as Penelope. John Hempstead was Neil McRae. Eileen Clifford was heard as Mary Fraser, Albert Miller as her husband Jim. Eleanor Stewart was Mariah, her husband Alfred, Gerald Rowan. Colonel Jeffrey Wayne was Ned Conlon. Steve Woodman played the counterman. Jill Stowell was Sadie the maid. Bill Walker was young Roddy Wayne. The timer was Bill Roberts, and the narrator, Norman Keel. Technical operation, Jean-Jacques Roy. Sound effects, Albert Ross and Maurice Hébert. This is part of the drama series presented by the CBC International Service. The CBC drama series presents Barometer Rising, a story of Nova Scotia in the First World War. Barometer Rising, the novel by Hugh MacLennan, adapted for broadcasting by Rita Greer. Production is by Rupert Kaplan of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and it's presented by the CBC International Service. Barometer Rising by Hugh MacLennan, Part 2. Tuesday.
The place is Halifax. The year is 1917. The day, Tuesday, December the 4th.
2 o'clock.
Sure, he's back from overseas. So many people in town now can't
Did you
find
ever see so many
anywhere for
ships in
lunch
at one
all.
time? Bedford Basin's packed tight.
The young man walked quickly with his head bent, and it wasn't until he was on Barrington Street with the stone wall between himself and recognition that he relaxed and realized that his shirt was dripping wet once more. His uncle hadn't seen him, though. A girl had come out of the restaurant laughing at the man holding the door for her.
Colonel Wayne.
Wayne hadn't seen him, he was sure. But he had to be more careful.
Careful.
It was the sudden encounter he feared. Someone he knew stepping out of a shop or a doorway and meeting him face to face, like Charlie Baxter Sunday night. The muscles in his throat tightened as he thought of it, and he found himself trembling again. Charlie Baxter's face peering at him through the glass door of the telephone booth, and his whiskey voice saying, "Well, if it isn't Neil McRae." Charlie had sailed for overseas, thank God. But what if he met someone else like that? Wayne. Wayne had returned from France, all right. Now he had to find Alec Mackenzie before Wayne found him. But where? Searching for 2 days already and no trace of Alec. He could only wait and keep out of sight. He'd have lunch in the railway station again. It was a relief to find it alive with strangers, brilliant with sunshine filtered through the glass roof, and roaring with steam exhausted from 4 locomotives which stood panting in front of their cars. The Sydney train, the St. John Express, the Dominion Atlantic from the valley, and a local train from the nearer villages. He bought a newspaper and went into the restaurant and found a seat in the corner farthest from the door.
And what'll it be for you, sir?
Oh, the fish.
1 fish.
He opened his newspaper and leaned back and relaxed his wounded leg.
Mind if I sit here?
He looked up sharply. It was a soldier.
Place is crowded today, huh?
With a start, he saw the number of his own battalion on the cap. For a frozen second, he stared at the face. Then his muscles relaxed, and he eased back in his chair. He had never seen this man in his life.
Sit down.
Thanks. Place is crowded. Lots of people traveling these days, I guess. Well, what's good to eat?
1 order of fish. That was yours, I guess.
Yes, mine, thanks.
Hey, that looks good. I'll have some of those, huh?
1 order of fish, thank you. Coffee with yours, sir?
No tea.
And hurry mine up, huh?
As soon as I can.
I'm
Kind of
supposed to be
crowded
out at the
today.
Army Hospital. I fooled him yesterday. I skipped out, went down to Truro to see the old lady. That train goes so slow, I thought I was going to be late. But it was worth it. I've been kept hanging around hospitals a couple of months. I'm sick of it. But I'm going to get myself checked up proper enough. I'm going to get myself a pension for everything I got. Yeah, I hope. If you don't do it before you get out of the Army, you never get it, huh? I guess you know all about that.
Oh, well.
Yeah. You look like you just been to mob.
That bad?
What was your outfit?
1 order of fish. How's that for service?
Oh, just fine, honey. Just fine. Why, this looks good, huh?
Tea.
Thanks.
Welcome.
I used to know some fellas in your outfit.
Yeah? Who?
Big Alec Mackenzie.
Oh.
You know anyone of that name?
Oh, sure. Yeah, everyone knew Big Alec. He was about the only guy left in the old battalion before reinforcements went in. Him and Colonel Wayne and an M.O. called Murray, I think.
Where is he now?
Alec? Smashed up. Not real bad. Like you and me, you know. Just about right.
Was he home?
Well, sure. Saw him about a week ago.
Here in town?
Well, sure. I just met him around. Got his old lady and his kids in town, too. He's doing all right. Got a pension. He's got a job, too.
Where?
Let's see. I don't think he told me exactly. It was a foreman's job, though. One of the wharves, I think.
Which one? Campbell's? Or Smith's?
I don't remember him saying.
Oh, Pier 2, maybe. Furnace Withy.
Say, you know your way around this town.
Wayne's.
Wayne's. Say, Wayne is the...
Did he say Wayne's?
Well, no, he didn't say. But you know, the boss down at that Wayne's wharf is the Wayne who used to be a colonel of our outfit.
Well, isn't he still?
Oh, no. He's still in the Army, of course. Transportation officer for Halifax or something. But he's doing his own business, too, they say. He got sent back from France a couple of years ago. Some sort of a ball-up over there in one of the big attacks of 1915. A slew of guys get killed off. But the boys in the outfit didn't have anything against Wayne, though. When I went over as a reinforcement, the boys were sore. But it was that some officer turned yellow, and boom, our guys get killed off. The yellow guy got killed off himself. Just as well for him, huh? Guy called, McCrae. Huh. No, I wouldn't mind being sent home on a nice, cushy desk job, huh? Boy, that was good. There was that girl with the coffee. Hey, miss!
Like your coffee now?
I sure would.
More tea for you, sir?
No, my check, please.
He got up.
Say, if you want to see Alec, why don't you ask around at the wharves? It's one of them.
Thanks, I'll do that. Sometime I'm in town.
He was annoyed to find that he was trembling again. He waited for the check and watched the man drink his coffee. Now there was no if and no maybe. For Alec either remembered that night or he'd forgotten. And a word would decide it.
Your check, sir.
Thanks.
Did you see in the papers where his daughter designed a boat?
Whose daughter?
Wayne's.
Penny?
Bright family, huh? Yeah. Even the women, I guess.
His throat muscles jerked. He found himself walking with exaggerated deliberation through the restaurant and out through the station waiting room into the cold day. Did he dare to risk the wharves? The back of his throat felt dry and parched, even while the moisture from under his armpits spread through his shirt until the linen clung coldly to his skin.
Penny.
A motor horn sounded, and he leapt. His legs began to tremble again in automatic convulsions. He swore at his shell-shocked body.
Like a fish on a hook.
He turned back quickly into the waiting room. The picture of Wayne flooded up through his mind with the nausea. Wayne's hard-muscled face and close-cropped gray hair, his black mustache and his large white teeth. Alec's big, sandy face came over it, and Penny's. Then Wayne's, cold. He closed the door of the washroom sharply behind him.
4 o'clock.
Colonel Wayne?
Yes?
Colonel Elliot is here.
Oh, show him in.
Yes. Oh.
Wayne, well...
I thought you were still in France, Elliot.
Just got back via New York. This war gets bigger all the time, and better. Different proposition from 1915, I can tell you.
Sit down, Elliot. Was there anything else, Miss Phillips?
Mrs. Wayne is on the phone.
I'm busy.
Yes, Colonel Wayne.
I thought you were a widower, Wayne. Why,
I am a widower. It's my sister-in-law. A whiskey?
Thank you.
I heard some time ago about your staff appointment. You like the work?
You bet. And what a bit of luck to be in New York while the rest of them are stuck with Passchendaele. Wonder who they'll make the goat for it.
I hope this is to your taste.
Thanks. Fine, that's good.
Thank you. One useful thing about this job, I can get good whiskey.
Things slow around here? You shouldn't be stuck in a spot like this. This war's a different proposition from when you were in France, I can tell you. It's become a permanent career. You should get yourself a staff job.
How long do you think the war is going to last? Or do you know any better than the rest of us?
About 2 years more, maybe 3.
I should guess 3 at the least. Another whiskey?
Thanks. Wayne, you got a raw deal in France.
Your drink?
Look, you and I were together at brigade that night before the wonky attack that broke you. Or am I wrong?
You aren't.
The attack was your idea, if I remember rightly. You practically planned it.
It was.
Surely that attack was one of those things. If it had been successful, you'd have had a brigade before the year was out. By now, you'd have had a division at the very least. You're a man with ideas.
Well?
The trouble was, your men retreated before they got killed. If they'd been killed a quarter of a mile farther ahead, it would have been all right. But they weren't farther ahead because one of your subordinates got cold feet. That was it, wasn't it? Why didn't you court-martial him? That is true. The man was a nephew of yours.
The officer in question was killed the night after the attack.
Well, no one can court-martial a corpse. Wayne, 2 years is a long time in a war like this. People forget about messes. Oh, I've got to be going.
Of course. I'll get Miss Phillips to show you...
Wayne, how would you like a staff job in France?
Are you making an offer?
I haven't exactly the power to make an offer, but there are plenty of strings that can be pulled. I think I can promise you a brass hat if you want it.
I want it.
Good. You will get it.
Miss Phillips.
Yes, Colonel Wayne?
Show Colonel Elliot out.
Thanks. I forgot to tell you, Wayne. I'm on my way to Ottawa now.
Oh, that'll be Mrs. Wayne.
I'll take it. Goodbye, Elliot.
Goodbye.
Yes?
Geoffrey, I must talk to you.
Mariah, is there really anything important you have to say to me?
It's about Penelope.
What about Penelope?
People are talking.
What people are talking?
Everybody.
Just what people are saying what, Mariah?
There's no use your trying to bully me, Geoffrey Wayne. You practically insulted us by allowing that Murray man in your house last Sunday, which was bad enough. But now I hear that your daughter is keeping company with him, and that's too much. You know it is.
What do you know about Major Murray?
Why, everybody knows about him.
Do they now? It's been my experience that few people know anything about anything.
He drinks. He doesn't do a stroke of work.
Major Murray was wounded, Mariah. A doctor with an arm and a sling is not much use.
He's dissolute. Geoffrey, they've been seen together more than once.
And what difference does that make?
What difference? Either Penelope is misbehaving or else she ought to be warned. Does a man like that Murray trouble his head over a young girl just for... Oh, you know very well what I'm talking about.
I think that's quite enough.
Enough, I should think it is. Do you know where Penelope is now?
At her office.
She is not. She's out of town. Someone saw them.
Who?
In the station, getting on a train.
Where to?
I didn't see them.
Oh, well, did it occur to you, Maria, that Penny might be visiting the Frasers at Prince's Lodge for the afternoon? And if they also invited Major Murray, that is certainly no affair of anyone's. And let me warn you, Maria, if I find you've been saying anything about Penelope to a soul in this town, I'll make you sorry for the tongue in your head. A woman your age ought to have more sense. Goodbye.
Oh, my, aren't we mad? Well, I couldn't help hearing you. What's she so hepped up about?
I have told you that my family affairs were none of yours.
I'm hungry.
You know, the queer part of it is, my dearest Evelyn, that you're really quite a competent secretary.
All right. But don't look at me that way.
Oh, you've learned a lot.
Let me tell you something.
Yes, I'm waiting.
Nothing.
Come here.
Ouch, that hurts. No, I don't like things sudden. You have to be so... You like it, don't you? Oh, she wouldn't love me up so sudden. It's not decent. I'm hungry.
Well, there's not much you can do about that here. Any more work to get done?
2 letters.
Finish them, and then you can go.
Aren't you taking me out for dinner?
No. Here, take this and get yourself something to eat, and then go to a movie if you like.
Won't you be coming around tonight?
Perhaps. You'd better be back by 9:30. I may want to see you then. Or I may not.
All right. Oh, come.
Five o'clock.
No, really, Penny. How can you say I'm boring, Major Murray? Am I?
Not at all.
My Uncle Jim Fraser, Angus, once he starts talking about Prince's Lodge, can talk of nothing else.
Oh, no.
He thinks nowhere is as wonderful as Prince's Lodge.
Nowhere is, Penny.
I know.
No, I really mean it. Now, this is where Major Murray ought to settle down, in the country. It's especially good for a doctor. Just look at the cost of maintaining a practice in a place like Montreal or Toronto. Why, you'd be doing as well with $2,000 a year in the country as with 10 places like that. You'd enjoy yourself in the bargain.
There's not much doubt of that. But the champions play in the city. I guess we all kid ourselves we'd like to be champions.
But Angus, look at the Frasers. A fieldstone fireplace, a moose head over the mantel with 1, 2, 3, 4...
14, my dear.
14 points on its antlers, a whole forest outside their door, and a small daughter inside.
Small adopted daughter.
What could be more champion?
Oh, watch her, Penny. She's got to pull your hair.
Jeannie, you
She ought to be in bed.
Why aren't you in bed, Jeannie? You've got your nightie on?
It's half an hour past her bedtime.
Come on. Up we go. Come on up with us, Angus. I'm putting her to bed.
That's a job Major Murray ought to be good at.
Not with such a small human. Most bed patients come in larger sizes. Can I carry her?
Thank you. There. Can you manage?
My good arm is very good. Here we go.
Mind the step. I usually have to tell her a bedtime story.
I'd like to hear that.
Oh, I don't know any, really. But I tell her some nonsense. She likes it. Don't suppose it does her any harm. I don't think she needs one tonight.
I'll wake her up specially.
Don't you dare. This is the nursery. No, don't switch on the light. Cot's over here.
There.
Oh, thank you, Angus. I'll tuck her in. Good night, Jeannie. What do you think of her?
It's hard to say. I've got a weakness for all children, so naturally I like this one. Where did they get her?
In Montreal. I think she's going to resemble Mary, don't you?
Isn't she adopted?
The Wayne characteristics are pretty self-assertive.
I can't see environment doing that much. Did your aunt know her parents?
Very well. It's funny how people change and still stay just the same as long as they live. I remember just after Jean was born, she couldn't do anything but lie on her back and blink at the light and cry whenever she was hungry. But even then I knew what she'd be like when she grew older.
You knew them too?
Yes. I was in Montreal, I told you, taking my technical training after Neil went overseas. Oh, Angus, you're not usually so guileless.
What do you mean?
Are you going to make me say it? Jean is my daughter.
Oh.
I'm very proud of her. I'll not bore you any longer. Neil was Jean's father. I'm not ashamed of it, but I had to give her up all the same. I gave her up forever when Jim and Mary Fraser adopted her. They're the only ones who know. And you.
Look here.
Never mind. You don't have to say anything. The train leaves in a few minutes, and I'm going back to town. You needn't take it unless you wish. At least there'll be several cars on it.
Penny.
Well, Penny, did you initiate Major Murray into nursery tactics?
I've got to go now.
Oh, Penny.
Jean's asleep. There's no need for anyone to come with me.
Oh, but you've still...
Wouldn't you like us to go to the station with you, dear?
No, of course not. Aunt Mary, I didn't mean to sound like that. I just remembered...
She's really very tired, Mrs. Fraser.
Of course.
There's a later train than this.
I'm coming now. Thank you, Mrs. Fraser. Mr. Fraser?
It was very pleasant.
Goodbye, Mary.
6 o'clock.
He was tired. There was nothing more he could do today. He hadn't found Mackenzie. He walked along Water Street where the pavement was cobbled, and he could smell the docks and see the funnels and spars of the ships. Here, in sight of docks and shipyards and seamen, he felt rooted and at home. This was Halifax. This harbor was the reason for the town's existence. Merely to have been born on this side of the ocean gave a man something for which the traditions of the old world could never compensate. This was his own country. He was back. And to be able to remain was worth risking everything. Funny. This street. In the easy days before the war, he had winced at the architecture of this town. It looked like an old town. It had a genius for looking old, and for acting as though nothing could possibly happen to surprise it. A girl came out of a shipping office and crossed the street walking ahead of him. Her neat long legs and slim waist made him hungry.
Penny.
He was tired. He had been tired for 2 years. In all this time, he hadn't once wakened up in the morning and looked forward to the coming day. His world's been composed of chance. One chance led to another with no binding link, but a peculiar tenacity which made him determined to preserve himself for a future, even though the future gave no promise of being better than the past. It was his future, and that was all he could say of it. At the moment, it is all he had. His legs ached with walking. He stopped on the corner and watched the Clydesdales and the low-swung gray drive past.
Sloven.
A sloven. One of the most typical vehicles of Halifax, with its high driver's box. The driver flourished his whip, and the lash flicked with a quick cracking arc over the sidewalk. And the sloven and the pair of heavy horses moved down towards the docks. He turned and began walking towards the station. He'd have dinner and go home.
$6:15.
Penny.
Yes?
Penny, will you still marry me?
But I...
Aren't you the guileless one now? I love you very much, you know.
Oh, Angus.
I do.
Angus, I'm so terribly fond of you. I think you and I...
I think so, too. Penny.
Rockingham. Now, you see, I'm not exactly the girl everyone thinks I am. Aren't you afraid I might hurt your reputation?
I've always been able to see what kind of girl you are. Though I didn't know a good many of the details.
There are more if you want to know them. Nobody knows them, not even Neil. He went overseas and went into action for the first time just before Jean was born. So I couldn't tell him.
You mean he never knew?
What was the use? He'd only have worried. Then he was killed.
Why didn't you get married in the first place?
We were first cousins.
What of it? Not even the Church of England prayer book says cousins can't marry.
No, but my father did. He hated him more than... He hated him.
There's one thing I can't understand. Why on earth did he enlist in your father's battalion, then?
He didn't. He was transferred into it just before he sailed. He really wanted to marry me even then. But it would have been so unfair to him, Angus. As one of Father's subordinates, his life must have been dreadful. If I'd married him, it would have been worse. As it was, my father was willing to have him court-martialed and shot if he hadn't been killed first.
Poor Penny.
Halifax! Halifax! Don't mind, Angus. I'd like very much to go home alone. I'm so tired.
Whatever you like, Penny.
I'd like to be alone for a while. And Angus... Thank you, Angus.
I love you.
Halifax, Halifax Station.
$6:30. He paid for his dinner and walked out of the station restaurant, through the waiting room, and into the street. It was growing dark, and the street lights flickered on. He began walking to the junction of Barrington Street and Spring Garden Road to catch his tram. He felt strangely peaceful. He felt he was home. At the corner, he stood and watched the splintered clouds in the west shake loose, one by one, from the turmoil of the sunset and begin their drift to sea. The sun had rolled on beyond Nova Scotia into the west. It was setting over Montreal now and sending the shadow of the mountain deep into the valleys of Sherbrooke Street and Peel. It was turning the frozen St. Lawrence crimson and lining it with the blue shadows of the trees and buildings along its banks. The prairies now were endless plains of glittering bluish snow. In the Rockies, the peaks were gleaming obelisks in the mid-afternoon. The railway line, that tenuous thread which bound Canada to both the great oceans and made her a nation, with one end here in the descending darkness of Nova Scotia and the other in the flush of a British Columbian noon. This was his country. A tram ground round the corner and stopped, heading north. He boarded it and sat quite still, looking sideways out the window, his chin in the heel of his hand, his hat on the back of his head, his eyes looking at nothing.
Darn that trolley.
He jerked round towards the woman conductor.
Excuse the delay, folks. Trolley come off the wire again. Won't be long.
He stared out of the window again, waiting for the trolley to grip, and the car to carry him north to his lodgings. $6:35.
Harold! Halifax Harold! Paper!
Paper, please.
One paper. Thank you, miss. Cold night.
Yes, it is.
Oh, boy, there's another one.
Beg your pardon?
Another trolley off the wires. Fifth one tonight. Those women conductors.
You're prejudiced.
Yeah? I'll bet she doesn't get it on herself.
You're wrong. She's got it on now. No. Now she has.
Luck, that's all.
Now she's underway. Women conductors can be...
Huh?
Neil! Neil!
Hey, lady! Look out! Time!
That was part 2 of Barometer Rising, the novel by Hugh MacLennan, adapted for broadcasting by Rita Greer and produced by Rupert Kaplan of the CBC. The music was composed and conducted by Neil Chotem. Bud Knapp was featured in the part of Major Angus Murray, with John Hempstead as Neil McCrae. Mary Douglas was Penelope, and Eileen Clifford, Albert Miller, George Alexander, Ned Conlon, Bill Roberts, Eleanor Stewart, Margaret Cunningham, Gladys Richards, Steve Woodman, Jill Showell, Gerald Rowan, and Billy Walker. Your narrator was Norman Keel. Technical operation by John Forrest. Sound, Albert Ross. This is part of the drama series presented by the CBC International Service.
The CBC drama series presents Barometer Rising, a story of Nova Scotia in the First World War. Barometer Rising, a novel by Hugh MacLennan, adapted for broadcasting by Rita Greer. Production is by Rupert Kaplan of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and it is presented by the CBC International Service. Barometer Rising by Hugh MacLennan, Part 3.
Wednesday. The place is Halifax. The year is 1917. The day, Wednesday, December the 5th.
Morning, 10 o'clock.
At this hour of the morning, Jeffrey Wayne's office was filled with sunshine so brilliant that the nickel on the edges of Miss Phillips' typewriter flashed a spot back and forth across the ceiling as the carrier traveled with the lines of the letter she was writing. Angus Murray leaned back in the only comfortable chair, smoked a pipe, and appraised Evelyn Phillips at work. She paid no obvious attention, but he knew she was aware of his gaze and possibly of some of his thoughts, and he admired her detachment. After nearly a quarter of an hour, Wayne came in full of apologies for being late.
Oh, sorry, Murray.
I'm comfortable.
Was held up. I hope that's some of my tobacco you're smoking, Murray.
Don't worry, it is. I don't have access to tobacco and cigars like yours every day.
Murray, I asked you to come in this morning because my daughter speaks to me a great deal about you.
So? I hope what she says isn't too boring.
I'll be very frank with you, if you don't mind. Penelope has begun to worry me. Since her mother's death, our house has been pretty lonely. I'm too busy to have people in myself, and glad to see your arm out of its splint. That's splendid.
Even though the finger joints still ache.
But it's good to know it's improving. After all, you and I are the sole survivors of our original battalion mess.
Of our original battalion, aren't we? Except a corporal, as I remember.
Murray, I've asked you here on a personal and delicate matter. I hope you'll take what I say in the spirit it's intended. The fact is, I want you to do me a favor.
Oh?
I have a feeling you'll be helping yourself as well. You'll certainly be helping Penelope. You know yourself that if a family has gained prominence, it can't avoid its responsibilities. Now, a situation has arisen.
Is Penelope having any difficulty?
I'm afraid she may get herself into an unholy mess.
I don't think
To put it bluntly, she saw her cousin, Neil McCrae.
What?
On a tram and out of uniform last night.
Alive? McCrae?
You can appreciate what that may mean to all of us.
Man, it's impossible. He's dead. Besides, I was with Penelope myself last night.
She says it was after you left her. I believe the tram was northbound on Barrington Street.
You sound as if you believed her.
I do.
But you certified his death yourself.
Yes, I did. But did anyone see the body? Did anyone? Missing, believed killed. That was the wording in the casualty list. You were battalion M.O. Did you see the body?
No, but I saw a hole the size of a church door.
So we both assumed he was killed.
How could he have lived through that bombardment?
Murray, you know my daughter pretty well. Do you think she's hysterical?
No, but it's obviously a case of hallucination. There have been hundreds of cases like that in wartime.
If any other woman but my daughter had told me, I'd have dismissed it in that way, too.
Yes. Well, granted then he's alive. What of it?
I have no intention of giving him another opportunity to make trouble for me and my family.
You were aware that your daughter's in love with the boy, of course.
What does she know about a thing like that? The boy used to appeal to her sense of pity. She's warm-hearted. She thinks every wastrel needs her support.
Your nephew was hardly a wastrel, was he?
No, just impractical.
Would you mind being specific about what all this has to do with me?
I should have presumed that anything connected with my daughter would be of concern to you.
What do you mean?
I'm no longer your colonel. I'm well aware that your affairs are no concern of mine. But my daughter's are. And when a man of your age and with your reputation, Murray, is paying open attention to her, just what am I supposed to think?
It would be a lot easier if you quit trying to be subtle with me.
Let's assume for the time being that Neil McCrae is in Halifax. What effect is that going to have on all of us?
You tell me what effect it's going to have on you. That's all you're thinking about, isn't it?
I was thinking of the effect it would have on my daughter.
Well, I can help you there in case you don't know already. It would be the most wonderful thing that's happened to her in years.
Even if it means he will now be shot by a firing squad?
What? You don't...
He's still subject to court-martial, you know. Whatever slight chance he had to escape sentence is gone now. He's made himself a deserter with a record against his name.
You'd actually do a thing like that to your own nephew?
I haven't the slightest chance of stopping anything that happens to Neil McCrae if he's found here. The first military policeman he meets will arrest him, if he knows who he is. Military law will do the rest. Penelope's cousin convicted and shot for cowardice, with her father the chief witness against him.
You probably still have more to say. I'm listening.
In the first place, there must be no court-martial.
How can it be avoided?
I'll tell you. We must find the boy once he's been found by us. I'm fairly certain things can be fixed. Now, he won't be in a hotel where he's likely to be recognized. He isn't with any of his relations. Why he's here at all, I don't know, but I'm afraid he may try to see Penelope. And if he meets her before we reach him...
Go on. I know what you mean.
It's my guess he's gone to a boarding house in the North End, probably. I'm having them all checked.
And why do you need me?
I want you to talk to him.
Why not talk to him yourself?
Considering everything, I don't think there'd be much point in that.
Probably not. Well, what do I say?
We must avoid a court-martial. The only way that can be done is for him to leave the country at once. Try to persuade him he hasn't a chance if he remains here, no matter what sense of grievance he may feel.
Grievance? What do you mean by that?
Nothing definite, I suppose. He feels the world is against him, that's all. He ought to. The world is against him.
All right. Go on.
He could easily lose himself in the States. He's probably using an assumed name. Tell him to keep it. And one more thing. Tell him if he ever sets foot inside Nova Scotia again or communicates with my daughter in any way, I'll see to it that the law takes its course with him.
Oh.
Well, in all fairness to me, isn't that the most decent thing I can do under the circumstances?
I don't know. If that's your only message to him, you'd better see him yourself.
I'm sorry. I should apologize for mixing you up in what, after all, is a family affair. I seem to have been mistaken. I thought your interest in my daughter, or your ambitions, to put it bluntly, would be enough to make you willing to assist.
We'd better stick to facts. You and I are so different, we'd never understand each other in a million years. Now, come on. What's the real problem? It isn't your family's prestige, or even Penny's welfare. What is it?
You may or may not be fond of my daughter, but she has attractions other than herself. Money, for instance. You're no longer young. And with that injured arm, not to mention your habits, your career as a doctor would be difficult. In short, if Neil McCrae stays dead, I'll be the first to wish you success with Penelope.
You know, I can't remember when I've been so blandly insulted. One thing I'm curious about. Did you know you were insulting me?
Murray,
Never mind about my marrying Penny. What's your real motive in wanting him out of town?
I've told you.
No. You see, I just can't believe that your affection for your daughter is that strong, or your regard for your precious family. It was McCrae. It was through him you lost your command, wasn't it?
Yes. I have a personal motive. Everybody has. After this war, the entire world will be bankrupt. It's already become a military society for purposes of the war. Do you think it will slip back into the old mold again? After this war, anyone outside the Army or Navy will be a nobody. The services offer the only sure future an ambitious man can hope to have. I've counted on that, Murray, and I intend to be in on it. And I'm not going to have any 2x4 scandal stop me. I got word only yesterday I'm to be reinstated in overseas service. And this time I shall be on the staff. You've asked me for my motive. There it is.
You know, the only thing that makes sense in this whole rigmarole is that you're all excited about a staff job, and that Neil McRae has something on you. He'd talk at the court-martial. I guess that's the rub.
Murray, don't you know how an officer gets onto the staff?
No. I guess I was never interested enough to find out.
Well, a man has to have qualifications, naturally. But some show of politics is often necessary.
So the dead rat under the family floor is beginning to smell. You not only don't want the boy court-martialed, you don't even dare let him get in calling distance of a court.
You don't know what you're
Young
talking
McRae
about.
was arrested on your orders, wasn't he? And the court-martial was never held, was it? Your version of the story has spread all over the place, Wayne. People take it for granted. Neil McRae disobeyed your orders that night, and half the battalion was wiped out. But I don't remember hearing his side of the story. Where were you that day? You'd lost touch with a lot of us, if I remember rightly. A fat chance you'd have of collaring a staff job if all that stuff came to light.
Major, you seem to have forgotten several things. It was I who committed McRae for court-martial, remember? In the light of that, I can't understand why you'd think I had anything to fear from what he might say. It is merely impolitic for me to have a scandal at this present moment. McRae would be convicted all right. He disobeyed a written order.
What was the order? Something impossible?
It would help if you didn't persist in regarding me as a scoundrel.
What was the order?
I was cut off from the front by the enemy's barrage. You remember that, don't you?
I remember the barrage. My dressing station was in the middle of it.
Very well. I sent a runner.
Who?
A runner. I sent him ahead to the front line with an order to the senior officer to advance immediately. It would have cost some casualties.
It certainly would.
It would have saved the attack from collapsing. For them to retreat. Why on earth he gave the message to my nephew, I'll never know. Of all the officers in the battalion.
You ought to know. All the other officers were dead by then.
The point is, he retreated to the very spot the enemy had chosen for a counter-barrage. The order was flatly disobeyed. It was complete loss of nerve, or plain cowardice.
If I've been making a fool of myself, I apologize.
Very well. Let's waste no more time misunderstanding each other. Will you see the boy and tell him to leave?
I suppose so. Tell me where he is and I'll see him. At least he has the right to tell someone his side of the story before he leaves.
All right.
And when he has left, what about Penny? Can she be persuaded she didn't see him last night?
She can be, by you. Or she'll forget all about him anyway, once she's married.
And then you'll be safe from whatever's bothering you. You're the first man that ever tried to bribe me. I'll not forget it.
An appeal to common sense is hardly a bribe, Murray. Our interests in the case differ, that's all.
At least your notion of a military dictatorship in this country is a lot of...
I'll let you know when the boy is located. Good morning.
10:30.
Angus Murray breathed in relief when he passed from the office to the wharf and the biting smell of salt in the blown air. A pack of cumulus cloud was building up over the land across the harbor, and the wind was hauling toward the south. He turned and began to stroll down along the wharf, watching the workmen unloading the wagons in a soothingly calm and regular rhythm. At the moment, he had no clear idea what he was going to do.
It's useless to argue.
It was useless to argue with himself. He knew so little about the whole affair. He knew nothing whatever of Neil McRae. He cared nothing about Wayne. If he were going to do anything, it must be done for Penny's sake.
All right.
He'd find out what she'd really said to her father last night, if he could do it without revealing the purpose. He'd have to go and talk to her. He took a last look down the wharf before turning about, and then, he double-checked what he saw. An enormous man coming out of the warehouse with a sheaf of papers in his hand. And there was no mistaking the face.
Alec Mackenzie.
Big Alec Mackenzie. The former corporal to Colonel Wayne, walking across the shed on Wayne's wharf.
I wonder, why does that particular man happen to be working here?
Murray watched him disappear into the dark shed. And then, slowly, he walked out the gates onto Water Street.
11 o'clock.
Penny.
Neil!
Let me close the door.
Yes.
Come inside.
All right.
I'm alone.
Yes, I know. I knew your father would be out. I've been...
We can go into the living room.
Nothing's changed. Wallpaper, map of Jamaica on the wall.
Neil.
Don't touch me. Penny, I mustn't let myself think of you like this now. Oh, Penny. Things are in an awful mess.
You didn't come back just to tell me that.
No. As a matter of fact, I didn't come back to tell you anything. I'm here to square some accounts. Have you got any fags around here?
I think so. Yes.
3 castles. Your father still does himself well. I'm afraid I haven't match.
Neil, why didn't you write to me? Why didn't you tell me? We thought you were killed. Oh, Neil.
Don't touch me. Oh, God. I shouldn't have come. I just couldn't stand it any longer thinking you were here. Oh, Penny, I've been alone all this time. I haven't even heard my own name in 2 years. They were going to shoot me, Penny. Do you think I could write you that? It's impossible. Here you are living in your father's house. Everything the same, nothing different. And he'd still have me shot if he knew I was alive.
Neil, I knew you were alive.
How? Who told you?
Yesterday I saw you. You were on a tram going north. What? I followed it in a taxi, but by the time I caught up, you weren't in it.
Did you tell your father?
I had to.
I might have known. Of all the people in the world, why did you have to tell him?
Neil, what else could I have done? Things have happened to me, too. You're not the only one who's been alone. I saw you last night when I realized you'd stayed away from me. Neil, I had to find out why.
Well, did you?
No.
Oh, you couldn't help it. I don't suppose it was much fun finding out I was here and hadn't let you know. I don't suppose it's been pleasant living with all the hyenas in the family prowling around you. Have you got a match?
Yes, in the jar there.
Tell me, what did Aunt Mariah say when she heard the sad news of my death?
Do you really want to know?
Yes, I've often wondered. Honestly, I have.
Well, at first she seemed to think you'd fallen in the line of duty, and that was so gratifying to her patriotism, she said quite nice things about you. She thinks now I don't know and I don't care.
Is Uncle Alfred still alive?
Of course.
Still baited by Mariah.
Mary and Jim are living in Prince's Lodge now.
Oh? Whatever made them come down from Montreal?
Well, that's a long story.
I read in the papers that you design ships these days.
Oh, that.
Good ones, sir.
Oh, I should be able to. You taught me, didn't you?
You're not married, then?
Of course not.
My young Penny, a ship designer.
Oh, Neil.
What's that?
Oh, I don't know. It's just a peddler, I think. Nobody's coming. Just stay here. I'll take care of it.
I'll close the living room door. Penny!
Yes.
Penny, I was afraid you'd gone out. I must talk to you.
Not now, Angus.
I must.
Angus, please, any other time, but not
Penny, it's
now.
important. Been talking to your father. He's here.
Who?
Neil. Is he?
Yes. See, Angus, you can't possibly come in. He's in trouble.
Are you telling me? There are angles in this case you don't know the first thing about. Maybe Neil doesn't either. I have to talk to him. Penny, don't you trust me?
Yes, I think I do, but I still don't want you here this afternoon.
You little fool, you don't know what you're talking about. Now listen. I just found out that your father's in line for a staff job.
Oh?
And Neil ought to know enough about the army to realize he can't buck that kind of competition. In wartime.
You can help him, Angus?
I can try.
All right. Only wait in the hall while I tell him you're here.
If only you knew how much I hate this whole mess.
Oh, I know, Angus. I'm sorry. I think I know how much you hate other people's business. I'll try not to be long.
All right.
Who was it?
Sit down, Neil.
Who was it, your father?
No, sit down.
I don't intend to sit down. Who was it?
Did you ever meet Major Angus Murray?
What's that? He's gone, hasn't he?
No, he's in the hall.
Penny, what's the idea?
He called to say he had something important to tell me. I told him to come in. Now sit down. Everything's going to be all right.
All right, he was my battalion M.O.
He's come to see you, too.
Oh. Well, I suppose I can go out the dining room way. Apparently I haven't yet learned to be careful enough.
Please.
No, this is where you live, Penny. You can ask whom you please into the house. But my plans are too important to be ruined now.
Neil, look at me.
Hmm?
Neil, I know what I'm doing.
All right. I don't know what you want, but I'll stay and see.
Oh, thank you, Neil. I've something else to tell you. Angus Murray wants me to marry him.
Oh? He does?
I haven't agreed exactly. Only we both thought you were dead.
It's all right with me.
Will you meet him,
No,
please?
don't worry. I'll behave. I've nothing against Murray. In fact, he seemed a decent egg in spite of his reputation for drink. You certainly know how to pick men, don't you? First me and then... All right, let him in.
Angus.
Yes. Hello, McCrae.
Murray?
Down, Angus.
Thanks.
Neil.
I'm all right.
I'm going to be frank, McCrae. I'm sorry you found Penny. And I'm sorry you're here now. But since you are, we might as well make the best of it. Where are you staying?
I didn't come to talk about my affairs to anyone. I came to see Penny.
I suppose it's not easy for you to understand that my general idea is to help you out. The important thing is to understand what the situation is. Then we can figure out what to do.
If you don't mind my saying so, it's none of your business what the situation is, and I don't want your help.
Sorry. I don't particularly want to help you either. I just happen to be mixed up in this myself, that's all. Colonel Wayne has given me a message for you.
Oh?
He asked me to find you, to say that he doesn't want you in town. In fact, if you don't get out of Canada immediately, he says he'll prosecute you to the limit. McCrae, a man can't just come back from oblivion and expect to be ignored. You've got to give some sort of account of yourself.
Neil, please don't stand in your own light.
Where were you the night I was supposed to have been killed?
In my dressing station.
Did you see any of the attack that afternoon?
I saw some of the results of it.
Competent performance, don't you think?
I've seen worse.
You know you've never seen worse. I'm saying this for Penny's sake, mind, not for yours. Since it's obvious I wasn't killed that night, I suppose she has a right to know what happened. Our Colonel Wayne, was distressed about the failure of the battalion and accused me of ruining the attack he planned so carefully. He put me under guard when he found out where his orders landed us and himself. Sometime in the night, a German heavy hit the top of the dugout where he put me. And several weeks later, I woke up sufficiently to know who I was. By that time, I was in hospital in England with my thigh in a cast and a pretty case of shell shock. My identity disc was lost, and I was registered as one Private Harry Bowman of the East Lancashire Regiment. The East Lancashires, of course, they relieved us. As an alternative to certain court-martial, I decided to remain Harry Bowman. Apparently he had no relatives. At least I never heard from any of them, so it wasn't as difficult as it might have been.
That was lucky.
You can believe it or not. I'm talking to Penny.
I don't disbelieve you, but you'll have to convince a military court. I don't think you realize how high the cards are stacked against you.
I think I do.
Wayne says he'll let the case lie buried if you'll leave the country.
I bet he would.
Look, McCrae, if it helps, I agree with your opinion of Wayne. But his case does sound pretty formidable. And at the moment, I don't know if you have any evidence on your side or not.
I have.
It'll have to be good. I don't mean the trial will be rigged necessarily, but... Well, it seems you did disobey your colonel's order.
I may be able to prove I didn't.
Didn't disobey him? You have the signed order?
No, it was blown up, but another man read it and memorized it.
Who?
I know who. He may still remember it. Oh, you should have seen the order that fool sent. I couldn't have obeyed one part without automatically disobeying the other part. It was stupid.
Is that all your case rests on?
Isn't it enough?
I'd have said yes 2 years ago, but you've been living under an assumed name. That amounts to desertion.
But I couldn't have acted sooner. The man, was reported missing himself just after I was. I only found out a month ago he wasn't killed.
I see.
Life hasn't been exactly sweet living in London all this time, trying to fake a Lancashire accent.
Poor Neil.
I was afraid to open my mouth. To make it worse, I couldn't get work with Bowman's Record. He was a plumber.
Oh.
Unfortunately, they can still get you for desertion.
No, I'm medically unfit for further service.
If you can prove it. But then there's your assumed name.
Call it a case of loss of memory?
Will the hospital in England verify that?
I don't know.
The easiest way out would still be a compromise, you know. Wayne would be...
But I wouldn't. He smeared my name all over this province to save his own reputation, and I intend to do something about it. I want to live in Canada, Murray. I haven't the slightest intention of going to the States or back to England or anywhere but here. So, once I've found my man, I'm ready for Wayne.
Can I help, Neil?
I think I can. Your man was Alec Mackenzie, wasn't it?
Why do you think so?
Because he's the only one left. Now I see why Wayne hired him.
Is it Wayne?
I saw him this afternoon.
Wayne controls him, then?
He's an honest man, Neil. I think he'll tell the truth, even if it does mean his job. But I think we should hurry.
What do you mean, we?
Neil.
All right. I was going to suggest that I telephone the company and see if I can find his home address, but if you'd rather I didn't...
I'd rather you didn't.
All right, do it your own way. Only hurry, you fool. Wayne isn't going to wait until you
You can
decide.
go back and tell Wayne to go to blazes. I'm leaving. Penny, will you come to the door with me?
Yes, I won't be a minute, Angus.
All right.
Neil, will you be gone long this time?
No. This time I won't. I promise. This time I won't, Penny. Oh, if you knew how you'd feel to me. Do you really want to see me again? Be honest.
Oh, Neil.
Penny.
Tomorrow, let me know where you are.
Tomorrow. I promise.
Tomorrow.
Penny,
Yes?
I think you would like me to leave too, Penny. I think everything is going to be all right.
Has he really got a chance?
I think so. That boy's not so rash as you think. There was not one word he said I could have used against him if I'd wanted to. But I hope he finds Mackenzie by tomorrow.
Do you think Father would...
I don't know what your father would or would not do. I only hope he finds Mackenzie by tomorrow. For your sake.
Angus, will I see you soon?
I wonder. Goodbye, Penny.
At 5 minutes past 9 the following morning, the munition ship Mont Blanc blew up in Halifax harbor, and the resulting earthquake, air concussion, tidal wave, and rain of fire wiped out the north end of the city and turned 1/4 of the population into mourners.
That was part 3 of Barometer Rising, the novel by Hugh MacLennan, adapted for broadcasting by Rita Greer and produced by Rupert Kaplan of the CBC. This is part of the drama series presented by the CBC International Service. Drama series presents Barometer Rising, a story of Nova Scotia in the First World War. Barometer Rising, the novel by Hugh MacLennan, adapted for broadcasting by Rita Greer. Production is by Rupert Kaplan of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. and it is presented by the CBC International Service. Barometer Rising by Hugh MacLennan, Part 4.
Thursday. The place is Halifax. The year is 1917. The day, Thursday, December the 6th.
Dawn.
The whole landscape shone. The rays of light poured in from the seaward horizon. As the sun rose, first red, then orange, then shining gold like the heart of a fire. The light poured into Halifax harbor and lit up the mist which lay like a liquid over the flat water and spread into the lower streets of the town. Sparks of light leapt off the weather vane of St. Mary's Cathedral, and the rising shield of Citadel Hill was bathed in a golden sheen. Nothing seemed to move, except the sun.
And a small black ship crawling slowly into harbor through the open submarine net.
In the houses of the town, Halifax men and women stirred in their beds and awoke to a new day. In his hotel room, Angus Murray was jerked awake by the telephone.
Yes.
You left a call for 7:15, Major Murray?
Thanks, I'm awake. Well, today I shall finish this business. First I'll see Alec Mackenzie, then Neil McRae, then Colonel Geoffrey Wayne. Then Penny? I wonder.
The black ship glided up the stream to the harbor with hardly a sound. She moved low in the water, heavy with cargo, but only her crew and the Admiralty and the Commodore of the convoy knew what her cargo was. Men on the motionless ships in the stream watched her pass and showed no interest. None had been told they were giving sea room to a floating bomb.
In the north end of Halifax, Neil McRae was awakened gently by the big hand of Alex Mackenzie shaking his shoulder.
Mr. McRae, I'm terribly sorry to disturb you, Mr. McRae. But if you wish to be up early, the breakfast is ready for you.
Oh, thank you, Alec.
I hope you rested well. I'm sorry there was nothing better in the house for you to sleep on than this sofa.
Oh, I slept fine. I feel fine.
Well, your mind is easy now.
In Evelyn's flat, a few streets away, Geoffrey Wayne stirred to the sunlight coming through the faded lace curtains and felt vaguely insulted. He turned away and fell again into an uneasy sleep. In the Wayne house, in the south end, Penelope Wayne awakened as the morning sun crept across her face and her eyelids. She looked at the clock and lay still. So still, she could hear the maid moving in the kitchen and her brother Roddy opening the front door to get the morning paper. She could hear the ticking of the many clocks of the house. But over everything throbbed the memory of Neil McRae's voice.
He's alive. I'll see him today. I wish he could see Jean.
But Jean was no longer her daughter. Jean belonged to the Frasers, and besides, Neil was still in danger of court-martial. She turned over and buried her face in the pillow.
In the harbor, the captain of a British cruiser came on deck to watch the black ship pass and saw her name, Mont Blanc.
Mont Blanc. And I wonder what she's got in there.
He looked at the oily canisters piled on her foredeck.
Benzol, probably. Well, a very sloppy ship.
The Mont Blanc proceeded cautiously up the stream.
At Prince's Lodge, Jim and Mary Fraser had already eaten breakfast in sunlight so bright it dazzled their eyes. And now they watched Jean set out up the forest path with the maid for her morning's outing.
Wave, Jim. She's waving.
Yeah. Makes a morning's trip seem like the launching of a large ocean liner.
Oh, she's growing more like Penny.
Yeah.
Jim,
Huh?
do you think Angus Murray will make her a good husband?
Oh, Jean? Oh, much too old. Come on now. Put on your coat or we'll miss the train.
Yes, dear. I think I wear a light coat. It's almost like Indian summer.
Better not. There's east in that wind.
Nonsense. There isn't any wind.
All right, there isn't any wind, but there's east in it.
Is he too old?
What, for Penny? Well, now, let's see. He's about as much older than Penny as I'm older than you.
Oh, Jim, you're centuries younger than he is right now.
Oh, I don't know about that.
They were still arguing good-naturedly when they reached the station and boarded the local train for Halifax. In the south end of Halifax, Maria Wayne woke suddenly at the sound of trotting horses.
soldiers. At this hour of the morning. Oh, dear, they shouldn't be allowed to go through the streets and disturb people. I'm going to tell Geoffrey he shouldn't let them take horses through the streets in the morning. I'll go over there right after breakfast. Alfred, are you listening? Well, answer me then.
The Mont Blanc was moving toward the upper harbour now, with little sound or evidence of motion except for a ripple at the bow and a thin wake. Bells sounded in her engine room as she pulled out gently to the exact center of the channel and moved toward the Narrows.
8:30.
Miss Penny, is that you?
Yes, Sadie. Can I have breakfast right away? I'm late.
Oh, Miss Penny, indeed you are. I've got your grapefruit ready right here. You sit down to table.
Fine, I'll have to hurry. Roddy.
What?
What are you doing here still?
I'm reading the newspaper. It's all right, Penny. Father's not here.
You better go off to school.
Here you are. I brought you some tea and toast as well.
Oh, thank you, Sadie.
Did you hear Colonel Wayne stirring?
He telephoned last night to say he'd be working.
All night?
Yes.
Oh, well, I'll clean up then.
Why do you work all night, Penny? Is it about the war?
I suppose so.
Tell me, Penny. I won't let on to a soul.
Roddy's school.
I can keep a secret. Did you know there was a German submarine just outside the harbor?
Don't tell me you saw it from the Citadel.
Willie Moffat told me. His uncle was on the duty boat and he saw it. It's a secret, though.
You know perfectly well the duty boat never leaves the harbor and couldn't possibly see a submarine. Now stop telling me lies and go to school.
All right. Penny?
Yes?
Penny?
What is it?
Are you going to marry Major Murray?
Oh, Roddy, and who told you I might? Willie Moffat.
No, I just wondered. I mean, he was here for dinner on Sunday.
Would you like it if I did?
Well, it would be nice to have a major in the family anyway. I mean, with Father being a colonel, it doesn't seem right that the only other soldier we had in the family was just a lieutenant, and he turned yellow.
Roddy!
Aunt Mariah says he did. That's why he got killed. He was going to get shot for cowardice
Never let me hear you say that about Neil McCrae to anyone. Do you hear me?
Gee, Penny, I didn't...
Never. Your cousin was not a coward, and he didn't get... Oh, Roddy, will you never do anything unless you're made to? Get out and go to school.
Gee, Penny.
And stop telling stories, to me or to anyone else. Now go.
Yes, Penny.
Would you like some more tea?
No, Sadie, I'm leaving. I'll just have time to reach the shipyards by 9, if I get a trap.
All right, Miss Penny.
The Mont Blanc was moving slowly up the Narrows, now almost hidden behind the rise of Richmond Bluff. Suddenly, around the projection of this hill, another vessel came, heading for the open sea. She flew the Norwegian flag, and to the startled pilot of the munitioner, the name Imo was plainly visible on the bow. She was moving at half speed as she made the sharp turn out of the basin into the Narrows. And at half speed, with white water surging away from her forefoot, she swept across the path of the Mont Blanc, exposing a gaunt flank labeled in giant letters, Belgian Relief. Then she straightened and pointed her bow directly at the forequarter of the Mont Blanc. Only at that moment did the men on the Imo's bridge realize that another vessel stood directly in their path.
8:35.
Major Murray.
I didn't know whether you'd remember me, Mackenzie.
Indeed I do. There are a few of us left from our battalion to remember.
You're right.
In fact... Will you come in, Major Murray?
No, Alec, thank you. I only wanted to ask you whether Neil McCrae has found you yet. And if so, can you tell me where he is?
Indeed. Will you come in?
He's here?
Alec,
Aye.
I'm afraid I mislaid my... What the devil are you doing here?
Looking for you.
You're a little late. I've already talked to Alec. I found my witness, so you can go back and tell Wayne that I don't give
haven't
it...
been seeing Colonel Wayne.
And why are you hunting me down? What's the idea? I thought I told you yesterday I intended to go my own way by myself.
And I told you, McCrae, that I have no pleasure in being involved in your business. But since I am, I am. I owe it to Penny, that's all.
Would you be more comfortable inside, gentlemen?
Neil?
I don't see that I have anything to say to you, Murray. I talked the whole matter over with Alec. He remembers.
Neil, I know that Alec Mackenzie will be your chief witness when the court-martial comes up. But Colonel Wayne will be the chief witness against you. Think a minute, McCrae. Alec, yourself, Wayne, and I are the only survivors of the original battalion. When your case is called, I'm certain to be made a witness. Wouldn't it be easier if I were on your side? Shouldn't we confer first?
But All right. Let's get done with it. Into the parlor, Alec?
Yes, Mr. McCrae. Go into the parlor, please.
8:38.
In the narrows of Halifax Harbor, the two ships moved toward a single point. Staccato orders broke from the bridge of the Mont Blanc. Bells jangled and megaphone shouts came from both bridges. The ships sheered in the same direction, then sheered back again. Then, with a violent shock, the bow of the IMO struck the plates of the Mont Blanc and ground a third of the way through the deck and forward hold. A shower of sparks splashed out from the screaming metal. For a fraction of a second, there was intense silence. Then smoke appeared out of the shattered deck of the munition ship, followed by a racing film of flame.
Jeffrey Wayne jerked out of bed and crossed to the window. The view was of untidy backyards and a couple of garbage men wheeling barrels toward the lane beside the house. He decided that a night like the one past would never occur again. It stood for disorder, and it soured his dreams of greatness.
The film of flame raced and whitened and became deeper, like an opaque liquid.
The men on the bridge looked at each other. Sailors poured out through the hatches onto the deck. An officer ran forward with a hose. But before he could connect it, his men were ready to abandon ship.
The flames swept over the canisters of benzol and became a roaring tide of heat, which trembled and leapt in a body at the bridge.
The captain and the pilot ran, and then they stood helplessly with the greasy folds of black smoke surrounding them, and the metal of the deck beginning to glow under their feet. They glanced downward.
Underneath that metal lay leashed an immeasurable energy. 500,000 pounds of TNT and 2,300 tons of picric acid lay there in the darkness, while the fire above and below the deck turned the hollow shell of the vessel into a bake oven.
The entire crew was in the lifeboat now. The officers followed, and frantically they rowed toward the wooded slope opposite Halifax, where they broke and ran for the shelter of the woods. 9 o'clock.
By 9 o'clock, everyone along the entire waterfront was aware that a ship was on fire in the harbor. The jetties and docks and shipyards near the Narrows were crowded with people watching. The Mont Blanc had become the center of a tableau. Even from the wharf side, you felt the intense expectancy in the firemen playing the hoses, the rhythmic reverberation in the beat of the flames, the steady steam of the scalding water on the decks. Everything else for miles around seemed motionless and silent. Then a needle of flaming gas, thin as a mast, and of a brilliance unbelievably intense, shot through the deck of the Mont Blanc near the funnel and flashed more than 200 feet toward the sky. The firemen were thrown back and their hoses jumped out of control and slashed through the air. Then, all movement and life about the ship were encompassed in a sound beyond hearing as the Mont Blanc opened up.
Forces were simultaneously created by the energy of the exploding ship. An earthquake, an air concussion, and a tidal wave.
When the shock struck the earth, the rigid ironstone and granite base of Halifax Peninsula rocked and reverberated. Pavements split and houses swayed as the earth trembled. 60 miles away in the town of Truro, windows broke and glass fell to the ground, tinkling in the stillness of the street. But the ironstone base was solid, and when the shock had passed, it resumed its immobility.
The air pressure of the exploding chemicals smashed against the town with the rigidity and force of driving steel. Solid and unbreathable, the forced wall of air struck against Richmond Bluff and shaved it clean. Smashed with one gigantic blow the north end of Halifax and destroyed it. Telescoping houses, snapping trees and lampposts, and twisting iron rails into writhing metal snakes. Within 30 seconds, it encountered the long, shield-like slope of Citadel Hill, smote it, and was deflected in 3 directions. Thus some of its violence shot skyward and spent itself in space. The rest poured around the roots of the hill before closing in on the town for another rush forward.
Underneath the keel of the Mont Blanc,
The water opened and the harbor bottom was deepened 20 feet along the channel of the Narrows. And then the displaced water began to drive outward, rising against the town and lifting ships and wreckage over the sides of the docks. It boiled over the shores and climbed the hill as far as the 3rd cross street, carrying with it the wreckage of small boats, fragments of fish, and somewhere, lost in thousands of tons of hissing brine, the bodies of men.
2,000 tons of red-hot steel fell like meteors from the sky onto Halifax. Over the north end, the tormented air was laced with tongues of flame which roared and exploded out of the atmosphere, lashing downwards like myriad blowtorches as millions of cubic feet of gas took fire and exploded. Almost before the last fragments of steel ceased to fall, the wreckage of the wooden houses in the north end began to burn.
In the railway station, the locomotive was still panting. Little puffs of dust spurted out from the piles of rubble and broken glass about its wheels and fell in a powder on Jim Fraser's face as he lay on his back. What a few minutes before had been a dirty roof of glass was now open to the sky, and sunlight shot through and the dust danced in it. A film came over his eyes, and he shook his head to clear it away. Agony racked him as though a saw was drawn across the bones of his spine. It was cold. Where was Mary? It was going to snow tonight. It was going to be a very cold winter. Where was Mary? He'd been heading for the newsstand on the platform, and Mary had said, "Where was Mary? Mary?" He twisted his head, and the pain nearly blinded him. But he saw her, and he heard a sound. A sound that seemed to be his own voice calling her name. Something stirred beside him, and he saw her head waver through the haze, then turn over and settle like a cut flower on its stalk. Somewhere nearby, a large sheet of broken glass toppled over. He perceived it with a distant curiosity before his vision darkened and all perception ceased.
Roddy Wayne sat himself down very carefully on the curb in front of the school grounds. Everything was utterly silent. He looked at his bare knees. The great wind had knocked him flat and his knees were cut. He looked at the school. The triple lines of window panes had disappeared inward, and nothing moved in it. And suddenly he smiled. It wouldn't matter being late for school now, not after this. Penny would believe him this time. A milk wagon came charging down the street, the horse tossing its mane, and the tall box of the wagon swayed from side to side. It plunged towards Roddy.
Hey, look out where you're going!
But immediately he closed his mouth again. The wagon had no driver. The front doors of the school opened, and the children came out in the regular lines of a fire drill. But some of them were cut and bleeding.
Oh!
A wave of nausea swept over him as he saw a spike of glass protruding from a small boy's cheek. And then he saw Willie Moffat, and he slipped over and stood beside him.
Willie, what's happened? Is the school on fire or something? What's wrong with everything?
Quiet. That boy there. You will all stand here until we find out what has happened. There is no need for alarm. Those who have been cut by glass will leave the ranks at once and go down to the basement. They will wait there until the doctor comes.
Gee, let's go and see what's happened in town.
Roddy stepped cautiously
Let's get out of
backward,
here.
moving on the balls of his feet and keeping his eyes front and his shoulders squared. And then, feeling his heels touch the sidewalk, he turned and bent double and disappeared down the street with Willie Moffat close behind him.
Neil McCrae could see nothing but a blazing light behind his eyes and could hear nothing but the thunder of explosions in his head. Even the solid earth was smashing at the soles of his feet. The blazing whiteness at the heart of an explosion. The whirling noise of the approaching shell.
My numbers are in!
McCrae, snap out of it. You're not hurt. You're punch drunk. Do you hear me? McCrae, open your eyes, man. Get up. You're not hurt. Can you hear me?
Neil opened his eyes.
That's fine.
Murray's face twisted and lengthened and shortened in front of him and quivered into steadiness as he recovered his focus.
You went flat on your face off the doorstep. Now, can you get up? Hurry, man. I've got to get Alec out. Alec! Mackenzie! Where are you?
Neil's eyes ranged dizzily over the slope of the hill. The street had disappeared. The devastation was more appalling than anything he'd ever seen, even in France. The houses were punched in and split apart, torn up by the roots and hurled hundreds of feet. Furniture and clothing and human bodies lay littered among the wreckage. Blackened figures were crawling out on hands and knees like ants from an upturned anthill.
Can you help me, Neil? He's under there. Alec's under the house.
The house was split to kindling. The main roof beam stood upright, straight as a flagpole in the heart of the wreckage, and by some vagary of shock, the horsehair sofa on which Neil had spent the night still stood on its four legs. Now his ears began to hear sounds clearly again, the cries of hidden voices and the sound of fire.
Can you help me, Neil?
Yes, I'm all right.
Good. Come on. On your feet.
Thanks. I'm fine. There.
Alec's caught by a beam. He's got his wife there. If you'll...
Hey, what's that? What? My head, it's burning.
It's on fire. Here. Here.
God,
Hey, it's out. It's out. How did that happen?
Oh, yeah, it's on fire. The whole house is catching.
The whole hill is burning. Get Alec out. Get away from here.
Come on.
When Neil and Angus Murray reached the hospital, Alec Mackenzie was still breathing. But already the driveway and the streets about the hospital were lined with the dead and wounded, were packed with garbage carts and trucks, bread wagons, slovens, wheelbarrows, anything on wheels to bring the wounded in. And all along the streets, the people came carrying the wounded on their backs.
Where's Penny? Where's Penny? Where will Penny be in the morning? At the shipyards?
Neil, I'm supposed to be a doctor. There'll be a big need for doctors very soon. I'll have to start working.
Then start with Penny.
In the first place, you'd never find her. She's being looked after by someone else if she's hurt. I'm going to turn the Wayne house into a hospital, and you've got to help. Let's find a truck or something.
Robbie Wayne felt important. This was the real thing, and for once he was in on it. He and Willie Moffat. Even Penny couldn't say he'd made this up.
Let's go downtown. I bet there's more to see downtown.
They wouldn't let Jimmy Swicker through. Who wouldn't? The soldiers. They got soldiers patrolling the streets.
Can we get through?
Sure. Your old man's a colonel, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, let's go.
Okay. Down this street? Look!
What? What'd you see?
There, on the curb.
Oh, that's nothing. That's only a dead man. You wait till we get nearer the docks. I bet none of the fellows at school see what we're
When
going to see.
Neil and
when we
Angus
get
burst
near.
through the front door of the Wayne house, Aunt Mariah was standing in the hall. She stared and stiffened when she saw Neil. Then her eyes went large and her bosom expanded.
God bless my soul.
Where's Penny?
You.
Where's Penny? Is she here?
You stay away from me.
Oh, I'll find out for myself.
You don't go anywhere in this house.
Mrs. Wayne,
It's him.
the report of your nephew's death was exaggerated, Mrs. Wayne. As you see, he's quite himself again.
Oh, God bless my soul.
I have no doubt he will. Now, I have authority to turn this house into a hospital. I need your help. A quarter of Halifax is wounded, Mrs. Wayne. All the hospitals and most of the public buildings are already overflowing with wounded. Now, I want all the furniture cleared out and beds set up in every room but the kitchen and bathrooms and library. Go to the neighbors and take all the beds they let you have. We'll need a lot of pans and hot water, so keep up a big fire in the stove. I'll use the dining room to operate, and I'll want it ready inside an hour.
This is an outrage. That man coming back from the dead.
Mrs. Wade,
and
save
into
the
this
family
house.
quarrel until later. Did you take in what I just told you?
What's this nonsense all about? I've been sweeping up glass all morning. All our windows are splintered.
So are all the windows in town. So are all the houses in the North End. An ammunition ship blew up in the Narrows.
They had no right to bring a ship like that through the town.
Mrs. Wayne, I'm counting on you as one of the most efficient women in Halifax.
She isn't here.
Penny left off the shipyards this morning.
Oh, why the devil couldn't you have told me? God, if Penny was in the shipyards, that boat blew right in her face. Come on, Murray, we're wasting time.
And never.
Mrs. Wayne, you're under orders. I'm going to the hotel to get my instruments. When I return, I expect to find beds in every room in this house. That old woman's going to be in her element in the next hour.
Huh.
I bet she loots the beds out of every house on the street.
She isn't funny. Murray.
Yes?
Penny may be heard. Will you come with me?
All right. Yes, Neil. I'll come with you.
Robbie Wayne pushed his way against the crowd, frightened and bewildered. The streets had now become channels of slow-moving people, and the long columns of people were a ghastly spectacle. women with torn clothes, men helping wounded, children staggering along with blood unwiped from hands and face. Roddy Wayne pushed against them without seeing, without hearing Willie Moffat close behind him.
Gee, I didn't know, Roddy. I thought that place was a store. I didn't know it was a morgue. Did you see your aunt and uncle? Did you see the Frasers? Did you?
But Roddy didn't answer. Suddenly, the adventure of the day had become a catastrophe. The unseen had cut into his own life, and he wanted only to be home with Penny and his father.
Neil McCrae and Angus entered the shipyard district, and the smoke grew thicker block by block. They began to bounce over wreckage in the road, and once a figure staggered out of a whirl of smoke in front of them and disappeared. And then it was hot, and the fires were all around them.
Yes, was the shipyards. Is someone beyond this? Yes. God.
At the foot of the hill, through thinning smoke, he could see the harbor shaking behind waves of heat and drifting smoke and dust. The shipyards lay at the foot of an embankment directly below him. Sailors from the dockyard were clearing debris, and the dead were already laid out under sailcloth in a double line on the packed cinders of the yard.
That was Part 4 of Barometer Rising, the novel by Hugh MacLennan, adapted for broadcasting by Rita Greer, and produced by Rupert Kaplan of the CBC. The part of Angus Murray is played by Bud Knapp, Penelope Wayne by Mary Douglas, and Neil McCrae by John Hempstead. Other voices were Albert Miller, Gordon Atkinson, Margaret Cunningham, Eileen Clifford, Eleanor Stewart, Jill Showell, George Alexander, Billy Walker. The narrators were Norman Keel, Bill Roberts, and Kenneth Cully. Technical operation, Jerry O'Dowd. Sound, Maurice Gingras. Announcer, Sheridan Nelson. This is part of the drama series presented by the CBC International Service. The CBC drama series presents Barometer Rising, a story of Nova Scotia in the First World War. Barometer Rising, the novel by Hugh MacLennan, adapted for broadcasting by Rita Greer. Production is by Rupert Kaplan of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and it is presented by the CBC International Service. Barometer Rising by Hugh MacLennan, Part 5.
Thursday to Saturday.
The place is Halifax, Nova Scotia. The year 1917. Thursday, December the 6th.
Morning, 11:30.
Everything was quiet, and the air smelled clean. It was so quiet, Penny thought.
Like the morning in Montreal. Remember, Neil? We could hear the man whistling in the street. Even through the window we could hear him, and he walked all the way up from Windsor Station up to our hotel. Wish you were here to remember, Neil.
She moved and tried to open her eyes, but she could only make out the form of her father's Persian cat as it arched its back and yawned.
Oh, I'm home. I'm only home. And you mustn't come here, Neil. My father will send you away again.
But she was too tired. Pain gnawed at her left eye, and a voice seemed to whisper in her head.
I don't care what happens anymore. I'm so tired. So tired.
Slowly, the quiet haze faded, and the house became full of strange sounds. There were people moving about overhead, and Angus Murray's voice was there, rising and falling, and Sadie's. And she could hear Aunt Maria shouting suddenly at the top of her voice to someone in the hall.
Yes, Mrs. Wayne.
It was all queer. Penny raised herself slightly on one elbow, and then a shiver shook her body, and she huddled back on the sofa. She remembered the explosion, the stab of glass into her face, and the floor of her office lurching and heaving Then the cracking roar as the building broke from its foundations and crumbled and slithered down and inward with a noise like hard, unmuffled thunder.
What happened then? When did it happen? I remember Neil and Angus shouting, long after. Did I wave? I tried to wave.
How's everything now?
Neil. Was that Neil?
Are you awake?
Neil, you're here. I was so alone. I wanted so
Are
much.
you awake, Penny?
Yes. I said yes. Didn't I say yes?
Do you hear me, Penny?
Yes, I told you. What's that?
That? That noise, it's just Aunt Mariah. She's got a crowd of women in there ripping up sheets.
Why?
For bandages. We've turned the house into a hospital, Penny. You're the first patient.
Oh, I'm a patient. What do I have to do? I'm so tired, Neil. Is it my eye? Don't look at it, Neil.
Penny?
Stroke my cheek like that. Don't go away again, will you? I don't want to be alone. Not anymore.
Are you asleep, Penny?
Like the morning Jean was delivered, remember? Oh, no, you weren't there. You were never there. I was alone, and it was cold and white, and I thought how cold the trees must be. I thought about the rabbits hopping around in the snow. Never mind about the rabbits, the doctor said. There aren't any left on Mount Royal these days. Haven't a thing to worry about. Just make an effort. Just once more. Now. I must find out if you like children. Neil?
Penny,
That isn't Neil.
you must make an effort, Penny.
It's only Angus.
I've got to operate on that eye of yours, Penny. There's nothing to worry about, but I can't leave it, or you'll lose the sight.
Neil's gone away. He's always going away. What do I have to do now?
I'll have to wash it. There. Does it pain badly?
Pain? I don't know. Angus,
Good girl, Penny. It won't take long.
where's Neil? Don't let him get caught, Angus. Father will have him shot.
It's all right. Your father's probably too busy to worry. The whole army's out trying to organize the mess.
What happened this morning? Everything's strange.
Hasn't anyone told you? A munition ship blew up in the Narrows. It's blown the town apart.
Oh, yes. That ship. They wanted me to... What is it I'm supposed to do now?
You'll have to sit up for a few minutes, my dear. Just put your arms around my neck. We'll soon have you comfortable.
Does it matter?
Come on now. One more effort.
Can't you let it go? I'm so tired. Angus.
Please, Penny.
I'm too...
Damn it, she's gone again. Mrs. Wayne,
Yes, Major Murray?
I'll have to operate right away.
On her eye?
I'm afraid so. She's pretty exhausted.
Poor child. We might have known a thing like this would happen to her, working in a place no woman ever ought to have been.
Yes, Mrs. Wayne. Everything's set up in the dining room?
Yes, but perhaps you'd better check. My nephew has gone to get more medical supplies.
Where does he expect to find those?
The military hospital, he said.
The military? Well, he is walking into the lion's den.
Well, if he's arrested by the military police, then the law will take its course. He'll have to face up to his court-martial and his cowardice sooner or later. Certainly as soon as Jeffrey...
Let's think about Penny, Mrs. Wayne. I'll need a nurse.
Well, of course, I have a Mrs. Stevens who'd like to help her. She's changing now.
She had operating room experience?
I believe so.
Good. I would like her to help me now.
Well, I'll send her in then.
Mrs. Wayne?
Yes?
If I knew another man who was free and competent to do this operation, Mrs. Wayne, I'd give him the case. You know that, I presume?
I'm not a fool, Dr. Murray. I would like you to know, despite your wounded hand, despite your reputation, despite everything, I have every confidence in you, Doctor. Now, I'll get Mrs. Stevens.
Well, that's from Mariah Wayne. There's more confidence than I have in myself, then. But the nurse will be a help, if she's good. Except that then she might know enough to criticize. Me worrying about what a nurse thinks. I've done dozens of eye operations without help. I'll do it now. With a messed up hand and a hangover. Oh,
Dr. Murray, I'm Mrs. Stevens.
good. She's ready, nurse. If you'll come and steady her.
Yes, Doctor.
Now, Penny. Just a few minutes, and it'll be over.
12:30.
Neil McCrae drove the truck up the hard, grassy slope of Citadel Hill to the top. There he stopped and looked at his watch. It was 12:30. Just a little over 3 hours since the munition ship Mont Blanc had blown up. And now Halifax looked like a city caught in the fulcrum of a battle.
From this height, the catastrophe took on a cosmic aspect. The whole population seemed to be moving, for everywhere there were people, moving, carrying their dead and wounded, moving away from the ruins, away from the fires, away from a possible second explosion in the burning magazine of Wellington Barracks. Citadel Hill was like an island, for the stream of people flowing round its base had no end or beginning, but moved like a lazy river drifting out of the smoke and winding southward along the channels of least resistance. And the very slopes of the hill itself were dotted black with people, huddling over their belongings.
Neil started the truck again. And honking his horn and twisting to avoid the refugees, he began to descend the long slope toward the crowded street and the military hospital.
1:30.
Who was that who slammed the door? This house is a hospital, please.
Sorry, my hands are full.
Oh, it's you.
Will you take this stuff?
What is it?
Hypodermic syringes, morphine.
Good, I have it. And please, no noise. Major Murray's taken Penelope upstairs, and we want absolute quiet.
Is he finished?
Here he is.
Oh, you're back, Neil.
I must get Sadie to put a silencer on
Is
that
she
door.
all right?
I think so. I think her eye's going to be as good as ever in a few weeks.
That's good news. Thanks to you. How's your hand bearing out?
It seems to have been adequate.
Good. You can handle a truckload of wounded then.
You've got them?
No, but I will have. The military are trying to get some sort of organization into this evacuation business. It's just shambles right now. I thought I'd take the truck up to the north end and set up a clearing station for wounded. Somebody's got to start somewhere.
Have you got help?
Oh, I picked up a sergeant. We'll gather more as we go. You've got enough beds for quite a few patients, eh?
I think we can handle whatever you send.
All right.
But, Neil, hadn't you better be careful?
What of?
Recognition. What if you're recognized?
Every time I turned around, somebody says, McCrae, when did you come alive? Did the explosion blow the hinges off hell?
Well, it'd be different if you run into Jeffrey Wayne.
Oh, Murray, I'm going to meet Wayne sometime or other, no matter what I do, so whatever happens then will happen. No, I'll send the first load back as soon as I can.
If I were you, I'd call in to see Alec Mackenzie. He might die, you know. Neil? I wonder if he heard.
2:00.
If the explosion had occurred in the south end of Halifax at the tip of the peninsula, already special trains would be carrying refugees back into the province, into the inland towns, and the trains would be bringing doctors and food and workers from Moncton and Montreal and Boston, and the congestion and the agony would be lessened before evening. But Halifax is tied to the continent by a single main highway and a railway track and a string of telegraph wires, all of which went out through the bottleneck of the north end, and all of which had been wiped out by the explosion. It had blown the town in on itself, and if a strong wind fanned the flames steadily southward, there would be a good chance of ultimately driving the remainder of the population into the sea. As it was, there was no end to the processions of wounded coming out of the north end. They dragged steadily out of the smoke, and the estimates of the casualties mounted hour after hour.
2:30.
Can we get through there? Yell to that guy over there, Sergeant.
Yes, sir. Where do we go?
Anywhere in the north end.
Yes, sir. Hey, you! We get through here?
Oh, it's too crowded.
He says to get off the street if we want to go north.
And how?
Wellington Barracks is going to blow up, he says.
Oh, that's fine.
I think the Germans started the whole thing. That's what I think.
Get out and tell that driver behind it back if he can.
Yes, sir.
And if he's not going anywhere in particular, tell him to follow me.
Yes, sir.
And get the guy behind him, too.
Yes, sir. Hey, back up! Back up and follow us!
Jump in. Now, here we go.
Whoop.
Now, we'll try the back lane. Are they following?
Yep. Boy, this is like France, ain't it, sir? Only queer.
Hold on, here's a ditch. Whip.
Do you know what I heard?
The master of one of them ships out there in the harbor was blown a clear mile and woke up naked on the top of Fort Needham.
That's that.
They say the angle of the hill was just the same as the course he was taking through the air. And he just sort of skidded to a stop along the ground. Nothing left on him but his boots and cuffs. I'd sure like to meet that fella and find out what it felt like.
Get that soldier in the truck there.
Hey, you! Me? Yeah, you! Follow us! Army order!
Smoke's getting thick. Wind your window up.
Yes, sir. Hey, I heard another funny thing. Fella told me he lay flat on the ground when that ship went off, and...
Get that man with the wagon there.
Yes, sir. Hey! Hey, you! Follow us! Officer's orders!
By the time Neil McCrae reached the fire belt, he was heading a caravan of 5 trucks and 2 wagons. Smoke swirled about them, but the flames were lower than they had been an hour ago. The foundations of houses were like isolated garbage heaps, with smoke and foul smells winding up from the charred embers. A few people were poking about helplessly in the wrecks of houses. Some dead were lying on the street, and the body of a woman oscillated slowly from the only lamp post standing on the block. She had been thrown against its top, and the cross beam skewered her bunched clothes and held them.
All right, we'll start here then. We'll have to use this fish market as a clearing station. It's the only place standing. You organize the men into search party, Sergeant.
Yes, sir.
And bring all the wounded and dead in here. The counters will have to do for beds.
Do you want us to throw out the fish, sir?
No.
Well, it's full of glass.
The town's going to run out of food soon enough. They'll need this. Now start moving. I'll get it cleaned up.
Yes, sir. Hey, we better hurry. It's starting to snow.
Oh, no. That's the last straw.
Midnight. It was cold when Penny woke. She sat up and peered around her room. It seemed unfamiliar and ominous. There were 3 cots set up close to her bed, and 3 strange bodies under the blankets, and it was cold. The wind howled outside, and there were angry spurts of snow against the beaver board nailed on the broken windows. For the first time, she was wide awake, and the events of the day crashed through her mind.
How many have been hurt? Jean. Jean. The Fraser house is in direct line from the Narrows. It would be flattened. No, the trees would protect it. And Richmond Bluff. That would deflect the force. She must be all right. She must be. Must make sure. Where are my slippers? Oh, there. I'm dressed. They didn't undress me. I'm still wearing everything I put on this morning. Was it only... Easy.
Where are you going?
What?
Oh, it's you, Miss Wayne. You should be in bed.
I feel much better. Is anyone awake? Is Mr. McCrae awake?
I haven't seen him. He's not in the house.
Oh.
Some of the doctors are still working in the dining room.
Some of the doctors? How many are there?
3, and Dr. Murray. Your aunt sent soldiers to capture them off that special train they brought in from Truro. I guess they thought they were going to the biggest hospital in town, but they had plenty to do.
Where's Major Murray?
In the library.
Thank you.
He's worn out, poor man. Worked for 6 hours before they came.
Thank you. I'll go in.
Yes, who is it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh. Penny, what are you doing out of bed?
I'm sorry I wakened you, Angus. But I wanted...
didn't know I was asleep. I was hunting for a cigarette, and I suppose...
Angus...
Do you know if your father keeps some cached away somewhere? My mouth's like the bottom of a rusty can, but I can't stop smoking.
Yes, Angus, of course. There's some over here.
Oh, good. Yeah. How's your eye? How does it feel?
I hadn't noticed it.
What got you up, then?
Did you ever wake up in your own room and find queer sounds and strange women in it? Here you are.
Oh, plenty of times. Thanks. Once I even thought there was a green tiger, but I wasn't sure.
Angus.
Hmm?
Angus, I'm frightened.
Don't be frightened about Neil, Penny. I think he's all right. I haven't seen him since noon, but he kept sending me a stream of patients. Neil seems able to take care of himself better than most of us. Your father hasn't been heard from yet, but I wouldn't worry about that either. All the army's working somewhere.
Jean. Have you heard anything about Jean?
Oh.
Oh, she's all right, isn't she?
Yes, Penny. Jean's all right.
Oh.
Jim and Mary must have left her at the lodge with the maid.
What do you mean?
They were alone when they were found. They were in the North Street station when the ship blew up. I doubt if anyone in the station survived. They're dead, Penny. I didn't want to tell you tonight. Don't sit there tense. Say something. Cry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not a doctor. I'm a bunch of shattered nerves. Penny, she's fainted.
Friday. All that night the storm grew, and the wind drove steadily harder out of the northeast, and the snow fell in the darkest night Halifax could remember. There were the lanterns and hurricane lamps that bobbed dimly behind the curtain of falling snow as they swung from the shafts of sleighs coming and going from the north end. And here and there was a glimmer on the snow around a lingering fire, and there were a few red lanterns the police had hung out at the street corners. But the rest was total blackness, and nothing to hear but the wind and the hiss of the rescue sleighs and the constant whisper of the falling snow. All that night, and all the next day, and the next night, the living dug in the frozen embers for the dead. Friday, midnight.
Neil McCrae and his sergeant stood in snow up to their calves and checked the file of men returning with stretchers to the dressing station. The soldiers stumbled in from the darkness, all of them as sooty as colliers from the charred foundations in which they'd been working for 36 hours. And they set down their stretcher loads and stood with arms limp and shoulders bowed over with exhaustion. Neil flashed his torch into the eyes of the 4 still bodies.
All this lot seem to be dead.
Yes, sir.
After the doctors made sure, you'd better take them out to the sleigh.
There's only one sleigh, sir.
Well, that's all we need, isn't it?
Told you a while back, the horses are just too tired to pull.
Oh. Are all the men back?
No. One pair to come.
Oh. Oh, we'll wait then. The men better move the horse, though. He'll freeze to death if we leave him out like that.
But no one answered him. He looked back at the long black shadows of the soldiers cast by the hurricane lamps, but none of them moved. Perhaps they hadn't heard him. Perhaps they were too tired to care any more what he said. Neil walked out of the shelter and flashed his torch down the snow-filled depression that had once been a street. Nothing moved across the beam but the unending spangles of white. Neil flashed the torch once more down the street, and out of the whiteness plunged 2 white men with the loaded stretcher between them.
Good. We were worried. I'll set it down here. I suppose he's dead anyway.
Bending wearily, Neil lifted the blanket from the still form on the stretcher and flashed his torch into the frozen, familiar eyes of Jeffrey Wayne.
Saturday afternoon, 5 o'clock.
That you, Neil?
No, Penny.
Oh, Angus, I was hoping you'd be back soon. I have some tea for you. You look tired.
I am.
I thought you went for a walk to relax. Sit down.
No. I've been watching another man die. Well, you look as though you'd had a good sleep. When did you get up?
I've been getting up at all hours. First it was dawn. Then I got up when Neil came in. I guess I'm up for good now. There you are.
All right. I suppose they've told you.
About Father? Yes.
He was killed immediately, I should judge, at the time of the explosion. Try not to have any regrets, Penny.
Regrets? Is that what I should have? Angus, what's the matter with me? Am I still in a stupor? I don't seem to feel anything.
About your father?
About anyone. Is it my eye, Angus? Am I drugged? Nothing seems to matter. I don't want to do anything.
Not even to talk to Neil?
No.
Oh, that's understandable in this house.
Yes. They hang on every word between us. Aunt Maria does, at least, and Roddy. Oh, but it isn't that. It's... I don't know. Ever since Jean was born, I've longed to see Neil's face when he first saw his daughter. Now I hardly want to tell him. Angus, he has never asked. He's never so much as wondered.
Why do you resent his not asking?
Oh, I know it's silly. Why should I? I don't suppose there's any reason to expect a man to wonder about a thing like that.
If you think he's forgotten, you know less about men than you imagine. Where is he now?
Asleep. Another explosion wouldn't waken him.
He needs all the sleep he can get. After another few hours, he'll wake up hungry, eat like a horse. Then he'll want you.
Oh?
He's got survival value.
Yes. But have I?
You've been drawing a lot of checks on yours for 3 years. Penny, I have something here. I just got it at the military hospital. Concerns you as much as it does Neil. Here.
What is it? Establish contact with Imperial Brigade on the right. Then attack second objective immediately. I don't understand, Angus. What is it?
Read on.
This is the message given by Colonel Wayne in writing to Corporal Alec Mackenzie and relayed to Lieutenant Neil McCrae on the afternoon
How on earth Neil could let Alec die without getting it down on paper? This is what he came home for, what he risked court-martial for.
Signed, Alec Mackenzie. Witnessed by nursing sister Claire Swicker and Major Angus Murray.
I suppose he was just too tired to remember that Alec might die.
You weren't too tired.
It was Alec who wasn't too tired. He was so weak he could hardly move, but he insisted on signing before he died.
Was Neil right about the message?
Yes. Half of it does contradict the other half. There wasn't any Imperial Brigade on the right. They were behind us. He had to withdraw to establish contact. But your father didn't know that, of course. He just knew he was in the mess, and his battalion with him. Well, Neil is free now, Penny.
Angus, I do want something now. I want to see Jean.
That's as it should be.
I want to take Neil out to her and stay there at Prince's Lodge among the green woods. And I never want to come back to this house again.
Penny, do that tonight. There's a train taking wounded out, I know. You go too, with Neil. Oh, Penny, I wish it were a month from now. I wish it were midsummer, no more snow. And the green trees were standing again under the sun, and the locusts shrilling at high noon. I wish your eye were better, Penny, and you were happy. Oh, I'm tired. I better get some sleep. Tomorrow I'll be moving out, too.
Where will you be going, Angus?
I don't know.
Out of Halifax?
Halifax? Out of Nova Scotia? No. I felt like that once, but not now. I found out I can work again, even if I do conk out after 6 hours. Overrating myself, as usual. From now on, that'll have to be enough. Work. And it will be. Now, if you'll excuse me, Penny, I'll get some sleep.
Yes. And sleep well, Angus. And thank you.
8 o'clock.
The train swung through a long arc as it swerved around the foot of Richmond Bluff. They were going out of Halifax now. They were leaving the hideous wreckage of the town. It was going to be a bad winter, Neil thought, with hospitals jammed and schools working double shifts and the thousands of people living in makeshift. Down the coach from where he stood inside the corner by the drinking water tank, the black leather seats of the colonist car were down, and the wounded lay on either side of the aisle, swaying as the train swayed. Neil looked down at Penny standing beside him, and his fingers touched her wrist.
You're all right?
Yes.
You look tired. Perhaps you shouldn't have come, Penny.
No, I'm all right, please, Neil.
All right. Seems funny going out to the suburbs at a time like this. As I remember it, Prince's Lodge was just a few houses on the edge of the woods. How old do you say she was, the youngster?
Almost 2.
Years?
Yes. She can talk a little.
Oh, is that remarkable at all?
Oh, yes. Neil.
Yes, Penny.
Neil, did you ever think...
Think what?
I can't tell you. I'm so tired. I can't think anymore. What will happen?
Yes, I know. Being time's the worst part of things like this. Oh, we'll be there soon.
Yes.
Oh, we're slowing now.
Neil, do you know what it means, this trip?
Yes.
Pretty dark. Watch your step. Hey, you all right, lady?
Yes.
I've got it.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
Do you know what it means, Neil? This trip?
Yes, I know. Wise Penelope. That's what Odysseus said to his wife when he got home. I don't think he ever told her he loved her, though. He probably knew the words would sound too small.
Neil.
That was Part 5 of Barometer Rising, the novel by Hugh MacLennan, adapted for broadcasting by Rita Greer, and produced by Rupert Kaplan of the CBC. This is part of the drama series presented by the CBC International Service.